2022. The time is 1:30, and this is a scheduled City Council strategic planning workshop. I noticed the presence of quorum and call the meeting to order. Item number 2, citizens to be heard. At this time, comments limited to 3 minutes will be taken from the audience from persons who have signed the speaker's card located on the back of the table in the training room at the Service Center and delivered to the City Secretary before the meeting begins, or written comments received by 10 a.m. on the day of the meeting on any subject matter that is not on the agenda will be read by the mayor and summarized in the minutes of the meeting. Persons wishing to address the council who have registered using the citizen participation form will have up to 3 minutes to speak. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council may not discuss or take action on any item that is not posted on the agenda. While civil public criticism is not prohibited, disorderly conduct or disturbance of the peace as prohibited by law shall be cause for the chair to terminate the defendant's time to speak. And I have a couple of cards. The first one is from Jennifer Day.
Jennifer Day, 902 East Cornwall Street, Rockport, Texas. I'm the Executive Director for the Rockport Cultural Arts District, also known as RCAD. RCAD would like to continue to partner with the city to help create a strategic vision and cohesive plan for the downtown Rockport area with citizen input, merchant involvement, responsible use of tax funds, and sustainable infrastructure. In 2016, we gathered stakeholder input in the district footprint as a part of the requirements for the Texas Commission on the Arts to be designated as a state cultural district. RCAD conducted meetings, surveys, secured alignment with merchants and key leaders regarding official resolutions of support from the 3 governmental entities to work together to transform the district. Results from that input collected included preservation of our cultural heritage, coastal city charm, with public bathrooms being the #1 communicating priority. Benches, seating, and shade amenities following. Outdoor art, gathering and performance space, murals, bike racks, fountains, and pet-friendly amenities. Data was also collected on parking preferences, types of entertainment, spending habits, and types of shops frequented. Some of these items have been addressed by RCAD or other entities such as the City of Rockport, even temporarily, and others are still being worked. This may be an opportune time to update citizen input through public meetings. RCAD initiatives over 5 years have had a good return on investment on taxpayer funds. We have created community cohesion with holiday and merchant supporting environments, partnerships with other nonprofits and events like Halloween in the district and Christmas in the district, the shopping tournament, Stroll Through Rockport, Shop Small, monthly farmers markets and makers markets, second Saturdays. We've held free, family-friendly kite festivals, even a decorated piano painted by local artists for anyone to share their talent in the district. RCAD solicited, was awarded, and managed the distribution of a $100,000 grant from the Sid Richardson Foundation to support small businesses within the district after Hurricane Harvey. 39 businesses received those grants. We encouraged public engagement and economic development with popular murals, the Ford Model T Club support, the San Antonio Ragtime Society, and the Depot as attractions. RCAD is providing historical and educational opportunities with restoration of the Depot, the upcoming symposium on the Rockport Fulton Art Colony, and Passport to the Past initiative showcasing the Texas Maritime Museum, the Rockport Depot, Fulton Mansion, and the History Center for Aransas County. RCAD also provides continual social media coverage, spotlighting our heritage, history, and culture, and also including a new Facebook Live called Donica, spotlighting businesses and various entities and events. RCAD is a conduit to additional funding by the state legislation, who allocated $10 million funding specifically for cultural arts districts in the state of Texas in their most recent session for qualified nonprofits within the footprint of the district. Rockport Center for the Arts has provided over $60,000 for arts programming and festivals and is expected to request additional funding. And Rockport Little Theater is expected to be qualified to participate in this year's Cultural Arts District grants. We look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy Rutledge.
Council, Christy Rutledge, 1411 Dana Drive. I want to talk a little bit about transparency. We've been asking for this presentation today. The last time it was given was February of 2020. Couldn't read those minutes, just recently got them. There's a lot of detailed information here. I'm not sure why the city has decided to go backwards regarding transparency and including the public in these workshops and also in planning and zoning commission meetings. There was no clickable link today for written comments to be submitted. There was no agenda packet, and this meeting is not going to be made available by Zoom, and it's not going to be posted to the city's new YouTube account. So we've gone backwards as far as transparency with our citizens. And we've talked quite a bit about this over the last few months with the interim city manager, with my city council rep, and with other reps, that the way to build trust after all the things that we've been through the last few years is to have more opportunities for inclusion for your citizens, to go ahead and get information out on the public record, get it out to your citizens, not just a small handful of citizens. We're going to hear a presentation on economic development, incentives, tax abatement policies today. Private boards are going to be proposed to be set up with private investors in the EDC, private company, and yet we blocked citizen participation and knowledge of this. We're talking about $55 million in new bonds, potentially to be rolled out over a period of time. We've got gas rate increases, wastewater rate increases, water increases, and this meeting is not being made, it's being made less available to your citizens. So we're going backwards. I would encourage you, you have a March 22nd comprehensive plan meeting. I would encourage you to make sure that that meeting is available by Zoom. You have a lot of property owners, taxpayers who are heavily invested in this community, who are active in your meetings, who participate by Zoom. So blocking them out of the planning process, as they were blocked out for the most part with the comprehensive plan process as well, is you're going backwards and you're creating more distrust with your citizens, and it doesn't have to be that way. Presented opportunities for rebuilding the trust after the tax notes were passed and the citizen petition was thrown out in August of 2020, and it seems like we're not heading in that direction. Continue providing financial transparency and getting all those records up to date, bringing this information out, but make it as accessible, if not more accessible, to your public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rutledge. I don't have any more cards, but if there's, this will be the only opportunity the public wishes to speak. If anyone wants to speak, we'll entertain that right now. This workshop, I believe, Mr. Morgan's or council, we want to make sure we get to all the items on the agenda. So does anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Take over.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you. Citizens that are in attendance, thank you for being here. Appreciate it very much. The city is like a major business, or it is a major business here in Rockport, okay? Just like any major business, you have a board of directors, okay? The council is the board of directors for this big business we call the city of Rockport. They are elected by the stockholders, they're elected by the citizens, they're elected by you guys out there. They elect the chairman. Our chairman is our mayor. Like most business boards of directors, they need to sit down together from time to time and plan to cuss, to work together, to talk about issues, to think strategically about the future. And that's what today is about. We're going to ask council to listen to each other. We're going to ask some questions about what we're doing here, what you want for the city of Rockport, what your constituents tell you that they want for the city of Rockport. That's why we're here today. And citizens, glad you're here, but I'm going to ask the council, pretend that they're not here. Okay? Pretend that they're not here. don't be shy to say what's on your mind, okay? Don't be shy to ask questions. Don't be shy to argue with each other. That's what boards sometimes have to do, to think strategically, okay? So let me go over the agenda real quick. First exercise is going to be a council visioning exercise, and it may take close to 60 minutes, maybe shorter, we'll see. Then we'll talk about future debt issuances, and Mr. Henderson is here to help walk us through those possibilities. What debt can we issue to meet the needs in this community? Then we'll talk about the actual needs, the capital improvement needs for the community. Specifically, the first thing we'll look at there is the $4.3 million that we identified as unspent bond funds. What projects can you guys spend those money on? We need to spend those monies for the benefit of the citizens of Rockport. So we'll talk about those projects. We're recommending some projects too. We'll also talk about other needs in police services, in public works, and drainage, and utilities. And we'll talk about a 5 to 10-year plan to accomplish those. And yes, we'll talk about some large numbers, okay? Very large numbers. And then we'll talk about developing a plan to go to the public for a possible bond collection in the future. And you guys can tell me and tell staff, tell the community what you're thinking there. And we'll talk about timing. Then I'll give you an update on your city manager search. And then, because a couple of you have brought the idea of selling some city properties, I put that on here for your discussion as well. And then finally, we'll spend some time on economic incentives, policies, and those reviews. And answer any questions that you have, make a brief presentation on that. Okay? So first up, we're going to go to the council visioning exercise. And I gave you guys some homework. Okay? So we're going to write your answers up here for everybody to see. Okay? Even though you're pretending that they're not here. Okay? Okay. So first question. And I apologize, Council Member Jackson, that you're going to be first on this question, but I promise you, you won't be first on the rest. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So tell us a little bit about what was the reason you first chose to run for the council?
My first thought when I decided to run for council is that, in my opinion, Ward 1 in its entirety has not been properly represented since I don't know when. It's in the past has been, well, north of Market Street. That's it. So that's the main reason I ran. The other one is because I had seen that council was just rubber stamping any spending plan that came by its way. Being fiscally conservative, I was not happy with that. Ward 1, all we talk about is flooding and drainage. I'd like to see something done about that. I figured sitting in the seat, I may be able to do that. And because if I didn't try and fix these things, who would?
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Burnett is running late from a meeting from Houston and his full-time job. So we're going to jump to Ms. Hackett.
Sorry, a little bit different than Ms. Jackson over there. I guess I decided to run because I wanted to be involved in the direction that this city's going in the future. I wish to be the voice for the younger generation as well. Those with families who are raising the future of Rockport and children in this town. That was a big step for me. And I think our voice is not on the top there. And then also, serving on many nonprofit boards around town, I just felt like a lot of the nonprofit community in town is in our local government. So I thought that would be something that I could help with working on the nonprofit board. So that is my main reason why I did sit on the here with the committee.
Very good. So we're already seeing different reasons for coming to running for council, for wanting to lead your city. So thank you. Mayor, you're next.
I started back in 2013. Actually, I started in the city around 2011 when I was recruited recruited by some folks that I belonged on the board of directors with a private entity here. The previous mayor pro tem, serving on that board, got to know them pretty well. We spent a lot of time together, and they were really interested in my experience and how I was able to try to bring people together on, at times, contentious issues on this board. And they wanted me to run for office, and I said, no, I was too busy being retired. And then they convinced me to volunteer on a couple committees, so I did that. I enjoyed the service, but in that, while I was doing that, I was noticing that I felt that my work could have been better represented, and they kept pushing me to run for office, so they finally convinced me to run. They were very tricky and devious, but I did run, and I'd never done anything like it before, but I was hoping to bring my experience to help the community. It's my home. This is where I decided to live. And right or wrong, that's what I'm hoping I'm doing.
Very good, thank you. I think what we all heard was you all decided to run because you love Rockport and you want the best for it. Coming at it from possibly different angles, but you serve because you love your community. So for that, I just want to say thank you for doing that. Okay. Next question is, what do you love about Rockport? What do you love about your city? And I'm going to start with Andy.
You have two well, that's an easy one. I say it all the time, it's the people and quality of life here. I've never met so many kind-hearted people who truly believe in our town as I have here. This town is full of passionate, very passionate people that are involved, and I think that's just great. And the big reason this town is so special is that we have those people here. The quality of life is amazing with the spirit, the beautiful scenery, and the wonders of nature to enjoy. So many artists, lots of things to do, and I truly believe this is a great town to raise a family and live. So I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Mayor? Pretty much the same reason. Rockport was always in our backyard. Growing up in San Antonio, we came here a lot. Our kids had their first Whataburger in Rockport, and we really enjoyed it. We visited when we were transferred all over the country. We would always come back to San Antonio and then spend a week or two here in Rockport. It's the people, it's the environment, it's again, being here for so many years and trying to figure out where to be the best place to settle down. If I had, what's that old commercial, if you have any coffee in the world, which one would you choose? Well, if you live anywhere in the world, where would you choose? Name City.
That's great. And did you say your kids had their first Whataburger?
First Whataburger in Rockport. They were living in Naperville, Illinois at the time, so we came down here.
Oh, okay. Very good. Katie, or Ms. Jackson, sorry.
That's all right. I only wrote down one thing. I love Rockport because it's a small town, but as a very good friend of mine says, good Rockport folk. Very down to earth, willing to help. Because I'm probably the only person in all Rockport who moves here sight unseen. And I got here and went, oh, I want to stay here. It's a cool place. So that's what I love about Rockport.
All right. Well, before resigning interim services here, I worked for the city of Bay City for about 6 or 7 months, and then I worked for the city of Fort Lauderdale for about 6 or 7 months. And I fell in love with both of those communities. But I will tell you that Rockport is unique, and you have a wonderful community here. You should be very proud of it. And you are recognized by other cities as someone, as a community to aspire to. Just working for those other cities, I can tell you that. Okay? And when Brad gets here, we're going to make him answer all these questions. All right?
Good.
All right. What do we need to make Rockport better? Mayor?
Well, it can be looked at in a couple different ways. There's a lot of folks that think we should leave things well enough alone. But if we do that, we end up like our big sister to the south. We don't take care of our infrastructure needs. anyone that's driven through that city down south that starts with two C's knows the horrible condition that their infrastructure's in. And that's a direct result of past city councils not taking the steps needed to take in order to improve things. So while we talk about retaining the charm of this place, which is extremely important, we also have to make sure that we take care of our what we have. That'll make Rockport is better. That'll make it better. It'll continue to make it better.
Very good. Katie?
Good jobs with good wages. Workforce housing. Drainage and flooding solutions for South Rockport. And an answer came to me while I was actually doing this, because I did do my homework, I'm reading what I wrote. There is an answer, maybe contact the Netherlands. I mean, there is an answer for South Rockport flooding, and I would like to see that taken care of. And I think that would make Rockport a much better place. Or at least decrease the mosquitoes.
Very good. So good jobs, more jobs, workforce housing, and planet trips at the Netherlands.
Yes.
All right.
I'll leave that.
Go to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Hatton?
I thought I was going first, so it's okay. So I kind of saved the 3 to 5 issues rough for the next one, as Katie was saying, so I apologize. But I think that for us to look at better, I think that as much as I think that people are passionate here, I do think that we need to start working together as a whole to move forward and accomplish things that people are so passionate about. Because if you don't, we're just going to move backwards and not forward. We also need to improve our infrastructure, like Pat had said, whether it was damaged by Harvey, outdated, or needed maintenance. We must ensure that our infrastructure can handle the growth we are seeing in population and housing. We must work together to plan, repair, and improve for the future. And we need to do that as a team, not individually.
I think that's great. What do we need to do to work more together? Just going to follow up with the question. Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think we need to start learning to, that's a very hard question. I think that we can do a better job at listening to each other more than arguing with each other. I think the back and forth is not productive. I think that, having a productive and assertive conversation is better than an aggressive one. So I think those are good starts on how to, or ask the right questions and get the right answers is an easy way to get that fixed.
And if anybody, if you guys have any thoughts or anyone else is speaking, feel free to speak up. Okay?
Well, I'm gonna piggyback on what Andrea had to say. We do have to work together. There's a whole lot of entities, not a whole lot, but there are some entities in town who think they know better than anybody else. And, we all can't be better than anybody else. We're all Rockport. We all want the same thing. So maybe a possible solution is more, maybe joint workshops might be an answer. Joint meetings, because once we get more than 2 council people, it has to be public with an agenda. So it shouldn't just be 2 people and this other entity, whomever it may be, it should be all of us. Because we all have input, we all have to make a decision. So I would like to see more of that, more town halls. And I think it comes down to communication of facts and not opinions. Everybody's got an opinion.
Thank you. Very well. Mayor, anything else?
Well, I tell myself on a daily basis that I remind myself that we're not enemies of each other. We're really not. Some people, at least I don't view anyone as an enemy. I know people have different ideas, different opinions, but just because something is said, either from here, it's not said with animosity, it's fact. I mean, I'm not in a position where I can make things up and tell lies. It's too easy to get caught. But then again, sometimes when you read things that are posted on social media, just because it's posted doesn't make it true. And that's difficult for people that aren't aware of all the facts, that just see things that are on social media and they think that's the gospel. It's really not, if they want to know. I've always told people, if you have a question, if you want to know something, call me and I'll give you the facts. I don't know you well enough to lie to you. I have no reason to. And sometimes the facts are difficult to comprehend, or not comprehend, to accept, I think is probably a better word. We're limited by lots of things, what we can and can't do here. You're right.
I would like to say I agree with that, but with the things that town halls, I mean, that could help, just our own different boards, if we would hold more town halls, we would be able to go and have those conversations or ask those questions and where they're available to answer them. I tell everyone in day, if you have a question and you want to get the answer, please reach out to me. And I work as hard as I can to get the answer. I can't, then I'll try to direct you to the person who can. So I think we do as best as we can to try to answer these questions. Is everything always the answer you want to hear? No, but we do try to get the answer that's there, that is the information we have. So I think town halls would definitely be a good answer to that, and that's up to a lot of us to do that ourselves. So I think that'd be a good start.
Another piggyback is the various entities around town. It's not just one group against another. There's all kinds of people involved in this. Is understanding that the answer is way longer than the question. And 9 times out of 10, well, why'd you do this? It's not a one-sentence answer. It's about like what a blog long. So, that's one of the reasons why I write the blog, is because a lot of people ask me questions, and it's easier to write a blog than to explain to every single person the same thing that takes this much.
So y'all talk about joint meetings or town hall meetings. I think that's a great idea. Do you think the other entities would be interested in sitting down once a year and just discussing community issues?
I would hope so. I can't speak for them, so I don't know.
The meetings we've had previously typically been subject oriented, on a particular joint resolution or a joint project. But every time I'm with people from other entities, I always remind them that we're all working on the same purse. We're accountable to the taxpayers in Aransas County, the city of Rockport. And that I always try to remind my friends at the county that, we all live in Aransas County, just some of us are luckier than them living in Rockport. So, but I think by and large, there's a lot of myth about the inability for the entities to work together. We work fairly well together. I know things are and it's more of a protecting their territory. They've got to watch out for their because I remember I've told people in the county before, we may not agree, but that's because we both have to protect our base. I love it if the county would come in and do our streets, but they're not going to. And they wish we would pay for county roads, but that's understandable. It's just having the ability to speak and to understand where we're coming from. I think it's not as bad as a lot of people.
Thank you. Let's move to the next question. So what are the top 3 issues facing Rockport? Start with Andrea.
Brad's here. Let's go, Brad. How's Brad?
Oh, Brad?
Let's just throw them right in.
Not even worse. Afternoon.
Well, let's let him listen to this answer, then we'll put him on the spot.
So you want me to still go first here?
Do you
All
mind?
right, I did. So the top 3 to 5 issues for me, particularly is with our community growing, we need to manage it responsibly, and I just don't want to lose our charm. That's a big deal for me, so I want to keep moving forward on that. Obviously, infrastructure and drainage, environmental sustainability, trees, water quality drainage, that's a huge, big one for me. The developers coming in here, they need to mind that we are a coastal town with a lot of charm, that don't take it away. And again, just to go back to the last question, I mean, I know you might feel that I see the animosity a little bit with Anna, so I think we do need to start working better and listening to each other and trying to figure out solutions more than problems, so to move forward on things.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor, I would echo everything Andrea said, but I would also add that we need to make sure that we've got some great opportunities right now in the way of educating our public, both in the school system, and they've got a great opportunity to help better, plus up the school facilities with this upcoming bond election. I think that's very important for the future of our kids, and I think the Workforce Training Center is a great challenge, opportunity for us to better our workforce. So those things have to be handled correctly.
Is there, I'm gonna let Katie or Ms. Jackson answer first, and then we'll let Brad answer. Then I have a question.
Top 3 to 5 issues. Infrastructure before development. Our infrastructure needs help, and we all know that. That should come way before mass development. Another issue is communications in all of its forms, not any singular form. Next one is workforce housing with the understanding of what it actually means as a rent payment. $1,500 is not workforce housing rental. Bringing in industry which is not weather dependent. Short-term rentals, pushing up the appraisal values, and wetlands preservation, including, trees, all the natives, no pumpkins, and all the other things that Andrea touched on environmental and ecological.
Okay, on the short-term rentals, do you stand on that?
It's in several of the documents that we actually have in front of the city over the last year, and it's been found to be true, is that the more short-term rentals you have in an area, it drives up the appraisals of the entire area. I don't know an answer to that. I'm sure something's gonna fall into my lap in the next couple of weeks. But, I mean, one of the big issues that I'm seeing is people, rightly so, complain that the taxes go up even though the tax rate did not go up. Well, all I can do is do the tax rate. I can't do anything about the appraisals. So, what can I do? That's one thing that we as a council can do to possibly quit having these tremendous increases in appraisal values.
I'm going to follow up the question. Is that, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
That's all right.
I know you can handle it.
Yes, I can.
So we're talking short-term rentals, and the more you have, the drives up the value. Are you suggesting a cap on new short-term rentals?
I do not know what options are available, what we can and can't do, what the rules are, any kind of regulations about or with or at or statutes. I have no background in this to make a recommendation.
We just know it's a concern.
It's a concern.
Gotcha. Very good. Mr. Brett? We are on
Don't make me
question
get my golf
4, which is top 3 to 5 issues facing Rockport. And as the council members are discussing their items, feel free to interject and ask questions and that kind of thing. Okay?
Top 3 to 5 issues facing Rockport. Obviously, we need to catch up on some infrastructure, repairs, bettering some of the issues we're facing all around the community. one neighborhood, but all over the area. Two would be our growth that we foresee coming down the road. Rockport is a very special place, and we're all here for a reason because we think it is a special place. So what do we want to see that look like down the road? Obviously not smokestacks and factories, but where do we get from here to there, and how do we do it? That's, I guess, the million-dollar question. So responsible growth, and then 3 is, I believe, is recruitment and retention of city employees.
Okay. So I've heard, I think a theme, managed growth, focusing on development. Is there a balance there? I mean, surely we're gonna have some growth.
Well, we are gonna have growth, but there is balance. It's just a matter of, my opinion, obviously, I'm the only one that can speak for myself, is that if we don't get a head start on infrastructure, as development continues, we are gonna be constantly behind, and it's gonna be catch up instead of us being ahead of the game.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts on that?
I agree with that, but a big part of, making sure that we're staying up with the growth and just updating our policies and ordinances. A lot of them are outdated, a lot of them are not. They're just not up to par what we need to focus on, especially my thing is the trees coming in here, clear cutting, you're not, these builders are not getting the picture that we just don't want that happening, we still do it, so, that's because we don't have an updated ordinance, so updating that is gonna be a big deal for me.
Okay, so you're not just talking updating the commas and periods and corrections and references to laws. You're actually talking about updating some of these ordinances to impact the community. Very good.
I definitely concur on that. Along with recruitment and retention of employees, that's one that, I think for me, that would have been the next one if I had to go one more. Because we do need to keep good employees on city staff.
Thank you. And you guys have some very good employees, and you should want to keep them. All right, I'm going to back up and put Brad on the spot. Mr. Brenner.
Ready?
All right. Number one, what was the reason you first chose to run for council?
So, there's many don't know my history here, a long time family resident of the community. I wanted to have the ability for my children, like hopefully someday maybe my grandchildren, live in a place that I loved and enjoyed growing up and not be something that we don't want it to be. So I was trying to do it so that there is a Rockport for the next generation.
Very good, thank you. That's a great one. Number two, what do you love about Rockport?
So as I said earlier, Rockport's a special place. We're surrounded by water on 3 sides. Pick your bay you want to go fish in. We have wonderful parks, trees. I mean, just the environment here is very special. People come from all over Texas to visit this area. Obviously, as you know, we're a tourist town, and they all leave with they come here and relax. And I work in a big city up the road, and try to calm down on my way home. But you come here and you just get a sense of relaxation, slows down. Not necessarily on island time, but we're close.
Well, I'm currently living in one of those short-term rentals, and I've been there out now for almost 2 months. And on the other side, I see the visitors to Rockport coming, and I take the opportunity to just visit with them whenever I can. Hey, what brings you to Rockport? And you're right, Council, it is a unique place. They could have chosen we need to do to make Rockport better, Mr. Burnett?
We have a few government entities in the community, and the better we can work together as a whole, I think the better we can serve the community. We are our own entity, but we all serve the common goal of, and our bosses are essentially taxpayers. So, we need to all kind of try to be on the same page as much as possible within our own lanes, I guess. That being said, make it better. Again, it's a pretty cool place. There's always room for improvement, and I think we're headed that way. But good, open communication throughout the entities and also to the electorate or citizens or however you want to say that.
Thank you. And I think we may be to the last question. After. So all this is being, we're obviously recording the audio of this, and we will take that and mesh it with the notes that we've taken, and we'll share it with everybody. Obviously, we'll share the audio with the public and put it on YouTube as well. Okay, any questions? What do you want Rockport to look like in 10 years? And we got the mayor going first here.
Well, my first wish is it looks the way it does now and better. Hurricane-free, so I'd like to see it in 10 years. And I think it's a compilation of everything we talked about. Infrastructure improved, drainage addressed, making sure that our schools are taken care of. If we can achieve those goals, I think Rockport will be just fine.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Jackson?
I hope there's a whole lot of real jobs here. Career-type jobs, professional jobs. I'm hoping all the roads within the city limits have the proper width and ditching. Because I know that's all about easements and blah, 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 and I know that we'll probably come up with a plan for that. I'd like to see, I'm hoping in 10 years, there's amenities for the residents, which the tourists happen to enjoy, instead of the other way around. And I'm hoping all the roads along Rancis Bay, Little Bay, and Coconut Bay are properly mitigated against coastal erosion.
Thank you. Now, a lot of the things you guys are saying do involve other governmental entities. So that's where we need that working together. Brad, Ms. Burnett?
So in 10 years, I'd love to see Rockport kind of echoing what the mayor says is a lot like we look like now, but a little bit better. Get some of our issues corrected and move forward. And also to piggyback on what Councilwoman Jackson said, have more careers available here in town so that not everybody's leaving, going across the bridge or over to Portland to secure work. And also, Rockport needs to be, we are an inclusive area. I mean, if we looked along our, this is going to be long-winded, I'm sorry. As we looked along our, when we redistrict our wards, we are a very diverse area, but if we can keep those people in our community and provide jobs and everything, they don't have to leave, I think that would do us a great service and fill a need in the community.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir, I'm sure I'll have some more later. That's pretty good for that.
Ms. Statman?
I'm just going off my notes to feedback. We need to see jobs that people can have, that they can afford to live here comfortably. I'd also like to see our small businesses, local businesses thriving, and having a workforce housing where our community is working there, they can live here as well comfortably.
did not hear any thought on population. Do y'all have any thoughts on population? What we should grow to or to grow naturally? Any thoughts on population?
I mean, we can't control the population, but we can control what we do with it. So, I mean, again, that's what the sustainability and keep, making sure that we fix our infrastructure ahead of these developments, making sure all that is correct, making sure that we are working together to keep all our natural resources intact and, not overdeveloped and torn away. So I think that's much what we can control. The population, I don't think we can in the long run.
Do you have any thoughts on how large we might become? Or
I
how
don't
large
like
is
to
too
be
large?
super large. I like having a small town feel, I like raising my kids in the town that they are, and knowing my neighbors, and that's,
I think most people are here because it's not a large city and it doesn't have a large population.
Okay. Well, we talked about having enough jobs and jobs that pay well enough to live here. That's gonna, if you create jobs, it's gonna create a population. So we need to think about how we manage that. What type of developments that we want to see in our community, those types of things. I think hopefully that's what the comprehensive plan tries to address and talk about future land use plan.
I think we have to take a real look at what we are and really identify what we are. We're not a deep water port. We don't have a huge air terminal. We don't have any type of over-the-road trucking terminal. We're sort of at the end of the line. But what we have in our advantage is we're really close to all those good paying jobs that we're talking about, with everything to our south, what's going on now in Sinton. And a lot of those people are going to want to live here. So I think short term, our industry is going to be housing. We want to provide a great place for people to live, a small town atmosphere. I can't see us growing, doubling population in 10 years. We just don't have the infrastructure for that. And in that infrastructure, I'm including jobs. To be able to afford to live here, you have to have a fairly significant job, income. And I don't see it short term here in Rockport. Dell's not gonna come down and build a factory here too close to the water in a hurricane. We don't have the infrastructure that's necessary to support it. But we can have people that live here who work elsewhere within a half hour, 45 minutes. If you look at the really big cities, most people are hour and a half from job to home. And that might only be 20 miles, but that's traffic. We don't want that. So I think realistically, we can really have what we want. We can keep that small town feel. We're going to grow some, but people are going to be working down the road, at least initially over the next 10 years.
On top of that, like Mr. Newton said several times, we're at 87% resident, 13% business. So we are continuing to tax our residents out of existence if we do not bring in more business.
Excellent point. All right. I think that's going to take us to the close of this section of today's workshop. But before we close it, just offer you guys time to say anything you want about what you just heard.
I think that, as I've said to a lot of people, is that we all really want to go the same direction. It's just a matter of how do we get there? And that's where the arguments, the disagreements, I'm bigger than you are, whatever it may be, all come in, because it's a matter of how do we get there, not what do you want. All of us want the same thing. We want Rockport to continue to be this great small town that has a fishing problem. So, that's the way I see all of this. It's a matter of getting everybody together on how to do it, not what needs to be done.
Well said. And I know we have our newly elected county judge in residence or here with us today. Glad you're here to hear this. Thank you. All right, do you guys need a break? All right. How about a 5 5-minute break. Microphones, and make sure they're on so they can hear. So, move to the next slide. Okay, so next we're going to invite Mr. Henderson up, and he's going to talk about our city's debt capacity. This isn't the debt that you have to issue. This is possible different debt scenarios. You'll be looking later on at some actual dollars and needs in the community. But I wanted Mr. Henderson to show the council how much debt that you might possibly be able to issue into the future without the tax increase. So he's going to walk you through a couple of different scenarios. The first is a $15 million debt issuance, possibly in going to the voters in May of 2023, with the debt issuance in 24. And then that one also shows a later possible debt issuance of $25 million. And there's some assumptions in that. Then we talked about a $12 million debt issuance with a later larger issue. And then we'll look at a bigger one, roughly $18.6 million debt issuance. There are 3 different scenarios. So this exercise, again, is more just to share with you what you could issue without raising the citizens' tax rate. I will tell you that you have many needs in the community, and that you should plan ahead and possibly put together a capital improvement program that you could take to the voters in the future. So that's why we're here to talk about this. With that said, go into the next slide. Now, I apologize for those in the audience. These are numbers that may not be easily read, but I think the council can see these, and we can certainly hand these out later. Okay? Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I'm going to talk fast. Richard and I don't know each other very well. We've scheduled these more than 30 minutes. Before I get started, I want to start by congratulating you guys for having a visions workshop. We've had budget workshops before. This visions workshop is really a step different, and I'm very excited that Richard has done that. I've been doing bond business for 40 years. I have over 100 governmental entities across the state of Texas, and particularly when we have governmental entities that have newly, preponderance of newly elected councils, we like to do these types of vision workshops to get exactly the kind of feedback that Richard does such a good job of getting. Before I get another thing I want to talk about is I've been in this community since 1984, both as a property owner and as a consultant. And there have been times in this community where we have had great cooperation between the city of Rockport, Fulton, the navigation district, the school district, the county government, of course. I was just reminiscing with some old bus mates because back in 86, 87, these 3 guys, along with most of the city councils of Rockport, Fulton, school board, navigation district, and the county, we all went on a bus ride looking at pocket parks. And this was in advance of the redevelopment, I should say, of the Rockport Beach Park. And that was a really unique circumstance. And I want to talk about it for just a second because what we did at that time was we recognized that the navigation district is, their mission is navigation, not recreation. So it was a unique environment in that the navigation district, which owned that property, entered into interlocal agreements that involved both the county and the city. It started to involve the school district at some point. I think in the final analysis, the school district did not participate. But the Rockport Beach Park is a function of interlocal agreements between the county, the city of Rockport, and the navigation district. And it worked very, very well. Beyond that bus trip, the local bank president, Jimmy Sorensen, and I, for several years, would host receptions every year just for the elected officials in town. And just for them to have an opportunity to socialize and talk about some long-term planning. So this is great. I'm very excited to see this again. Getting to the numbers, Ms. Jackson, as she has become in the habit of doing, emails me questions. And she talked a little bit about debt capacity before we get to the numbers, I want to talk about this concept of debt capacity. As Mr. Morton just said, this does not mean that he is recommending, or anybody is recommending that you go out and issue debt, that you go out and have a bond election in 2023, 2028. He picked, I think, probably arbitrarily, 5-year increments, because that's pretty standard in the municipal debt business in terms of long-term planning. And we go to rating agencies and talk about long-term strategic planning. They like to see those things in 5-year increments, and I'm sure that's exactly why Richard did what he did. For those of you who have insomnia, you might read the response that I gave to Ms. Jackson with respect to what is debt capacity and how do you define it. And the fact is, there's any number of ways to define it. One is based on the parameters set forth by this elected body. What you're going to see, first of all, is a study that looks at the parameters this body set, which was not having an increase in your interest and sinking fund. But that's just one parameter. In the notes that I gave Ms. Jackson, you understand, I explained in probably more detail than she wanted, what the state limitations are in terms of tax rates for home rule cities. And then I also discussed sources of revenues. And that's going to get to the $18 million option that Mr. Ward talked about. Which debts paid from taxes and which debts paid from utility systems. And particularly as it applies to the utility system, there is no set answer to debt capacity. You've got a certain number of customers in this community that consume a certain number of gallons of water, and based on your rates, that generates revenues, and there's debt. Your answer is going to be vastly different than the answer for the city of Corpus Christi, let alone the city of Dallas or Houston, which have much larger populations and much more volume in the utility system. So what we're going to talk about today really has just to do with that portion of your debt that may be paid from taxes. So one of the capital improvement sheets that I saw when Mr. Morton organized individual meetings with council members included some pretty substantial numbers for utility systems improvements. I think it was $18 million for the gas system and several million at the very least related to the water and sewer system. But here what we're talking about, I think, and this is again a workshop, and I'm just a consultant, just like Richard is. We're going to bounce off of what you as a legislature say, but we're talking about things that are typically paid for out of taxes. And these are going to include public buildings like your city hall, equipment, roads, streets, and in this community in particular, drainage issues. So that's what we're really talking about. When you do get down to the multi-year capital improvement plan, you really need to think about it in those terms. What is normally paid from out of taxes and what is appropriately paid for out of utility system revenues. The last thing, and this is again, I'm going to refer to the email response I gave to Ms. Jackson, is what can you reasonably get an investor to buy, right? We know, and congratulations again, I'm just getting the utility, the bond rating for the city of Rockport increased. And you got it increased not only because even with the debt we just did, you have a very modest amount of debt in this community, very short-term debt, and these graphs will demonstrate that. Strong fund balances, strong fiscal management, stable, political environment in the main. But if you've got an investor that's willing to lend you on the debt-to-AD ratio, or how much debt you have outstanding based on that's paid from taxes versus the amount of tax base you have against which to levy taxes, your debt capacity before I think your bond rating would be impacted would probably be 3 times what your current existing debt outstanding is. Now again, I'm not recommending you go out and triple your debt. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that debt capacity is a fluid thing. It's based on your tax base. It's based on what the investors will actually buy the bonds for. It's based on what projects that you're financing and which of those projects are being paid for out of taxes versus which ones are being paid out of utility system revenues. So, with that precursor, let's start with the schedule that you have in front of you. This is a schedule that you've seen before, which is exactly why you're seeing it again. I wanted to try to maintain, as did Mr. Morton and Katie, a familiar format. You can see, looking at this, that the column H is a $8,120,000 transaction that was just approved in February, and you can see the refunding of the 2020 notes there, the savings that were derived, or less the refunded debt. So really, all the columns through column I, projected total debt service, that shouldn't even say projected, because that is in fact your debt service. And then we start with column J, which is the series 2024 bonds. Now, why 2024? Let me go through the basics. One of the suggestions that was made in these individual meetings was possibly having a general obligation bond election at a regular uniform date in May of 2023. You see, if the election passes, prioritize your projects, you engage your engineers and your architects, and probably would not actually issue that debt until January, February 2024, about 6 or 7 months after you have your bond election. So we're talking about a bond election potentially in May of 2023, if that's the decision of this council, starting paying that debt in 2025, following the issuance in 2024. $15 million, there's nothing special about that number other than we were trying to figure out mathematically what's the maximum amount of debt that we can do with respect to not having to raise that INS tax rate. To be honest with you, the very first numbers that Mr. Morton asked us to run was 25 million and 25 million. Again, it was just for illustration purposes. And we came back and said, that's a little too much to do that without a tax rate increase. So we're at $15 million there. It does involve restructuring, again, some of the city's existing debt. The city has, most of the city's debt that's outstanding, except the $8,120,000 that was just issued, is going to become callable in February 24 or February 25. So you've got some latitude there. It is almost certainly the case that if the interest rates are the same in 2024 as they are today, whether you did a transaction or not, you would want to refinance that debt, because that debt is outstanding at 3 or 4% coupons, and we could refinance it and save the taxpayers money. Now, how we structure that refunding would then depend on what this community wanted to do in terms of an election. So there is a modest restructuring there that helps us keep the tax rate at 18.4 cents. It shows another $25 million in 2029. That's following the May of 2028 election. So in terms of trying to hit your target of what can we do without raising the tax rate to address the infrastructure problems that you've talked about, be it drainage or streets and curbs and what have you, I think this is what can be reasonably done and not have a tax rate increase. It's up to you what you do. I think the next slide, or do anything more?
Before you leave this one, talk a little bit about the assumption.
Yes, thank you. We have always been very conservative in our assumptions on every variable that we can actually put our fingers on. If you look at column, where's my tax base?
I did not show that, but the assumption.
Okay. There was a column that talked about what your tax base was and what the growth was. And this is the 4% option. What we showed, dating back to 15 years, but certainly to the February 2020 model, and as recently as last month, was growth of 3% per year. That has proven to be very, very modest, maybe too conservative. We, in fact, had more or less 10% growth just last year since Hurricane Harvey, have had growth in excess of 6 or 7% every year, certainly on average. For purposes of this model, the growth rate was increased from 3% to 4% through, if I can read that correctly, 2026, and that would make sense. So we've assumed that. We've assumed a 20-year final maturity on each of the debt transactions. We assume interest rates that are about a full percentage point higher than today's rates, because I can't predict what in February 2024 the interest rates are going to be. So I don't want somebody 2 years from now, 3 years from now saying, this is what you estimated the debt service to be, why is it different? Well, the answer is, it could be actually lower because your growth is good. It could be lower or higher because the interest rates are more or less different than the assumptions here. We probably would not change the final maturity of that, except to shorten it. Because this city has, which is why part of why the bond rating is so good, has traditionally paid off its debt pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. So again, this is it assumes a 4% growth rate through a certain time. The next slide is the same thing, but on a 3% growth rate.
Right. And what you see from this fundamentally is that how that difference in the growth assumption impacts your numbers. If you look at the far right column, you see we're still targeting an 18.43% interest rate. So the difference between a 4% growth rate assumption and a 3% growth rate assumption is basically the $3 million difference between the 12 million and the 15 million. Now, again, this is just a model that we're talking about here in February or March, I guess now, 2022. If you have an election in May in 2023, and if you decide to sell that bonds in 2024, we will obviously update the information based on what we understand growth rates will be at that time. What's important for this board to know, this board of directors, as Richard pointed out, and for the community at large to know, is that bond authorizations as a function of a general obligation bond election is deemed valid by the Attorney General's office for a period of 10 years, which means that you can vote these bonds in 2023 and not sell any of them or all of them until 10 years later, 2033. So, and of course the same is true for the school district and any other government entity. But the point being is that if you go out in May of 2023 and you decide to vote $15 million, and we get to February of 2024, and interest rates are different, or tax base growth is different, you don't have to issue all $15 million. You have the latitude to issue whatever it is that you choose to issue, when you choose to issue it, up to a period of 10 years from that election date.
Thank you. Then the next slide, and you'll see in the needs analysis for the general fund, over 2 to 5 years is close to $18.6 million. So I asked Mr. Minister to run that so that you would see what that, if you guys, okay, going to the voters for $18.6 million, and if they approved it, what impact could that have on the tax rate?
And what's important to know about that is that, again, aside from the assumptions of growth and interest rates and so forth, there are assumptions with respect to restructuring existing debt to try to accommodate what it is that you're doing. For purposes of illustration, we have not changed column K. That assumes the same debt structure in terms of restructuring that we use to get to the zero tax rate impact of 18.43 cents. So leaving all of our other assumptions aside, changing nothing other than what does your capital improvement program say that you need in the next 5 years, we simply went to 18,625, and you can see in column O, the estimated INS tax rate increase for that is 2.63 cents. And then we get to the, go ahead, sir.
I think we have a question. No? Okay, sorry.
Come on, Katie, ask me one question.
Okay, here we go. Going back to the previous slide, we were talking about how we don't have to issue bonds right away, or we don't even have to issue the entire sum.
That's right.
Okay.
All our forever.
So how does that work for paying that bond back? I mean, is it only this much from this date and then this much added to it from this date?
Exactly. You're only paying debt back as you actually issue it based on the amounts that you issue. So voting in February 2023, $15 million worth of debt is not going to cost anybody a nickel any time until all or a portion of that is actually sold. You start paying interest based on the date it's sold.
follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
So let's say we issue 5 million in 2025 and the rest in 2026, just to give it a place.
That's not right.
Does our 20-year issuance start with the first issuance or the second issuance, or is it split?
That's a decision that the council gets to make every time you do a transaction. Typically, you would start, if you're adopting a 20-year debt program, it would be 20 years from the issue date of each segment.
Okay.
So you'd have 20 years for 2025, 20 years for 2026, based on those individual sizes. But again, there's nothing magical. We have to make assumptions for our model, but that debt could just as easily be 19 years, or 22 years, or 14 years. It just depends on what the economic circumstances and direction the council is at the time.
And then at each issuance, the interest rates and all of that stuff is when it's issued, not from the
That's
initial
correct.
issue, but the second issue has its own.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's just exactly like when we all go out and buy a house, you're going to lock in a rate based on whatever those current interest rates are at the time. You're not going to preset it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I did not include the 25-25 because I thought that was too much to ask, and I think that's beyond what the needs are.
So I'm done.
Done? If you have any other questions?
Quick one. On the tax reported debt service, is that principal and interest, the item C, or column C?
Say it again?
Is that principal, the entire debt? I just put a question from the city financial transparency page. We're paying off, in 2022, we're paying off 3.39 in principal, we're paying 1.23 in
Okay.
interest.
Is there another tab on that spreadsheet? No, I'll go down and find Oh, those are screenshots.
Just screenshot.
There is the spreadsheet that these screenshots came off of had multiple tabs down on the bottom showing scenarios. And one of them is called debt service by source. So what I showed is what the total debt of all the city debt is. And that includes not only your what we call constitutional debt, which is your certificates of obligation and general obligation bonds. It also includes the energy lease obligations of the city and the lease that the city has in conjunction with the law enforcement center with the county, okay? So I'm showing all of that debt. The number you just cited is related to that. And then I break that debt down into, all right, how much is paid from interest and sinking fund taxes, how much is paid from water and sewer utility, how much is paid from the gas system utility, how much is paid from hotel occupancy taxes, because some small sliver of that is being paid from that source. So I need to refer you to that tab, and I'll be happy to meet with you and go through that. But the number you cited is all of this total debt. What's cited here is just that portion that's being paid out of taxes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great question. Mr. Anderson, thank you.
Thank you.
Stick around if you can, just a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just in case. Okay. So next up, we identified back in January 2022, this year for you, that we had $4,494,287 of unspent bond proceeds. And at that meeting, you guys said, hey, we need a plan to move forward on how to spend that money. And we do need to spend that money to the benefit of the citizens of Rockport. So that's what this discussion is about. I did want to let you know that as of February of this year, I think it was approved in the budget, that of that 4.4 million, you guys approved 200,000 for an inter-road and parking at Memorial Park. So the real number that you need to work with is 4.294, okay? Now, each of these bonds, some of these date back to 2005. Each bond issuance had bond covenants which said how you can spend these funds. So I've kind of broken that down for you there on this page. Total unspent bond proceeds available for utilities, $2.1 million. Total unspent bond proceeds available for streets, drainage, and parks, $1.7 million, and then $405,000 that can only be spent on parks, okay? But I also wanted you to know that we have applied for and received what is called the American Rescue Plan funds. We received $1.3 million in August of '21, and we will receive another $1.3 million in August of '22. So I've included that $2.6 million with the $4.2 million to show you what you can spend that money on, give you some options there. So let's go to the next slide. So on utilities, the previous page said unspent bond proceeds available for utilities was $2.1 million, or $2,186,499. And then we have the American Rescue Plan's project funds there of $2.6 million. So possible utility projects to spend those funds on in utilities. Okay? If I go too fast here, slow me down. Okay? The number one project from SCAS's perspective is the wastewater treatment plant, and we've got resources over here on my left and right if you have questions about specific projects. Okay? The wastewater treatment plant is in dire need of repair and upgrade, and the estimated cost to do that project is $3,625,000. Okay? If we don't get that fixed, the community is in trouble. How to fund that? Well, we're recommending to you that you spend of that $2.1 million, $1,189,000 out of unspent proceeds, and then $2.4 million of the American Rescue Plan funds. Next up in utilities is an elevated tank rehab. That's the tank here. And the estimated cost there is $320,000, come out of that $2.1 million. Then there's a project, a force main project from Gagan to the wastewater treatment plant, and an estimated cost of $345,000. What you're not seeing here are projects that we'll talk about later that we just couldn't afford to do with these monies. Okay.
Richard, on that force main, or maybe Chief Don, that force main, was this one of the ones that was going to go to the county for the CDBG grants?
No.
No, that was not the one that kind of, there were some force mains in there, was there not?
There are some force mains that would be possibly eligible for that money. This was not one of
That
them.
was one, okay. Sorry.
No,
Getting confused.
please ask questions.
And the tank rehab, is that sandblasting tank?
Yes, we have tank industry consultants who come in and do an analysis of the tank, the condition of the tank inside and out, and then make recommendations. Of course, the exterior will be, I apologize. Yes, tank industry consultants will come in, they will do an inside and outside inspection of the tank, and they will bring it into compliance. As you can see, it hasn't been painted since the tank was installed when this facility was built, and it's time for exterior paint and interior review to determine. I don't think there's a whole lot of damage or corrosion inside the tank, but they'll bring divers out, they'll get in there and check it out, and make sure that we're in compliance.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, there's one other question. Sorry, Chief, reading it. With the wastewater treatment plant, the 3.6, we're pretty comfortable. I mean, our numbers are out, as we know, City Hall.
Right, yeah, I could see it being maybe just a little bit more than that, but I do believe we have the fund balance to cover it. I've got, estimated that this was done in August of 2021
Okay.
with prices back then for the needed repairs and upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, and that's where that number came from.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Great questions. Next up is the SCADA system. at wastewater treatment plant, the lift stations. Mike, you want to tell them what a SCADA system does?
Right, the SCADA system is an electronic monitoring system. We have it on our elevated storage tanks, our ground storage tanks within the community. We have a room back here in the back where we have a computer system where a technician can come in and look at all of our water storage tanks, our ground storage and our elevated storage tanks. And they can look at the pumps to determine how many hours that they're running, look at the capacity in the tanks. Just as an example, we got notification this past week from our water supplier, Santa Patricia Municipal Water District, that they have potential of choking back the water coming to Rockport early this week to do some repairs. So we came in on Sunday, we looked at all the tank elevations and everything, and made sure that all the pumps were on and everything else. The SCADA system that we're proposing here will do the same thing for some of our critical area lift stations that will give the technicians the ability to have a handheld device or a laptop that they can look at the level within those large lift stations, if you will. You know, when we have a power outage, the power goes out, the pumps go off, and we can't pump waste. So it's critical that we keep an eye on those things 24 hours a day. And we're putting together a program to put the electronic monitoring of the SCADA system on our lift station as part of our wastewater treatment. And the other thing that we're doing as time goes on, when we do repairs at all lift stations, especially when we get into the electric panels, we're going to put in what we call plug-and-play pigtails. So if we do have a power outage, we can take portable generators from spot to spot to spot, turn the lift stations on to keep it pumping to the wastewater treatment plant during outages and such.
Okay.
2 questions, sorry. New lift stations that will come in with future development, will they be required, the developer be required to use the SCADA system when we put them in?
Absolutely. We're looking at upgrading our standards right now. Again, the development of the infrastructure right now falls on the developer. If they want to come in and develop within our community, they pay to have the infrastructure installed. They install it to our specifications. Once it is installed, it's inspected and accepted into the city system. And then after we accept it, we maintain it from that day forward. On a lift station, they will be required to build a city-specified lift station that will include the SCADA monitoring and the plug-and-play for the generators.
We've already touched on the generators. With the recent legislation for backup generators, can you kind of walk me through that just a little bit, please?
Absolutely. Yes, there's legislation that is requiring backup generators on a lot of your plants, your water plants, your wastewater treatment plants and everything to ensure that if we have a power outage similar to last February, that we did have strategic located place generators within our community to ensure that we had backup generation for the pumping of the water and the treatment of the waste.
Are we good going at now, or is that a
We
thing we need to fund?
are not 100% compliant, but we're working towards it.
Okay. Would any of that fall under some of this bond, potential bond money, or are you think we're good?
We're seeking all sorts of grants. Generators come along after every emergency, every large weather event. There are always a lot of grants that follow behind those types of things. And we're in the process of looking at a large portable generator that would be trailer mounted. That would be our first generator that comes into the system and we'll be able to take from place to place. And we can pump from one lift station to the next lift station to the next lift station, so on and so forth. At our water treatment, not our treatment facilities, our pumping facilities, we don't treat water here in Rockport. But at our pump stations at 188 and Pin Oaks, we have backup generators at those locations that keep us compliant.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Mike. The next item there is the replacement of a 35-year-old check valve out in the Rockport Country Club area. If you have any questions about that, sure, Mike, we'd be happy to answer that.
Just have one. What is the normal lifespan of those valves then?
25 to 30 years. Yeah, and once we put them in, and you know, of course, they're changing the materials and everything. You know, before they were all metal and brass, and they would corrode in this atmosphere. Now they're plastics and resins and those types of things. So those types of valves and everything do last longer than they have in the past. And so we're looking at new technology, new materials and such.
All right. Then the last one in utilities. out and hire a natural gas industry consultant. As you know, we own our own natural gas system. And as you'll see later, we think that it will cost upwards of $18 million to bring the system into compliance. And so I think a valid question is that we need to ask, do we need to continue to operate that system? Or should we consider packaging it and selling it? So these dollars will bring a consultant that will help us answer those questions. Any questions? Okay, go to the next one. Okay, so this is the area of streets and drainage. And again, on that summary page, the amount of unspent bond proceeds available was $1.7 million for, again, streets and drainage. And these are the projects that we're recommending to you. And as you can see, there's about $192,000 in the American Rescue Plan funds that we've got in here also. But we can go down this list if you have any questions. The first one there is the building repairs and equipment replacement, basically to rebuild the fleet maintenance building for about $105,000. Again, any of these, please feel free to ask questions. I'm going to let you look at it for a second, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer. If you want me to go item by item, I can do that too.
I'm assuming canopies going to be cheaper than moving the unleaded and diesel together.
Yes, we're still considering that. We've been doing some research and we found out that our underground fuels tanks at the Lowell Street Complex have been in the ground for over 40 years. And it's probably time for us to consider taking those up for TCEQ compliance and putting the tanks in the ground, with the new standards that are, and the new materials that are available today, and putting them in one location together. As you know, right now, the diesel pumps and the gas pumps are separate from one another, would require two canopies. So we're looking at the potential for digging those tanks up, putting new tanks in the ground in one location with one canopy that covers both fueling stations.
Okay. So do we need to, I guess, revisit the two canopies, or?
Well,
I don't want to build a canopy and then tear it down,
right.
if we come up with a better plan.
We want to do things right. And again, this is a plan for how to spend those dollars. As we bring these projects forward, you will have the opportunity to, again, you'll need to approve the spending of these dollars on each project as it is. But again, we have to develop the plan, and these are the items that, again, the staff's recommending as the most, the highest priority.
We need to look and see what the cost of bringing those together would be too. It could be more than the canopy.
Absolutely. The first thing is to have someone come in and do an analysis of the tanks, the condition of the tanks. To continue to be TCU compliant with leakages and those types of things. We've been blessed that we haven't had any infiltration of water into our fuel tanks, especially after large-scale rain events that we've experienced over the last couple of years. But as I stated, 40 years in the ground, it's time to take a look at what we've got. And, if we're going to dig them up, putting them together is the right thing to do. And I don't, if we dig them both up and put them both back on the ground separate from one another, we're still digging them up and putting them back in the ground. So if we dig them up and put them closer together, the economy of scale for what's going to cost shouldn't be that different.
Thank you.
There's a large item here, $460,000 for sediment removal at Rockport Country Club, the lakes out there. It's been a while since we removed some of that sediment. We didn't hit every pond and lake out there. Now this is pigeonholed for that drainage basin. And if we need to spend it all on sediment removal, we can. We're communicating with the group out there at the country club on an existing project that we have funds for out of the current budget. But if we don't use all this for sediment removal, we could use it for other things out there to repair the drainage system.
On the drainage master plan, do we have one that's, like that we have with county, now district? Do you guys thought of doing that? If we did one all together, would that save money in the long run? Since we all tend to have drainage that kind of works together with each other?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely wise. And if you guys approve of spending these monies for the drainage master plan, I think we ought to reach out to the county and work together for a county-wide plan and use these funds in combination with that. Absolutely.
We are moving towards that. We've been meeting with the group from Clean Coast, Texas. They're looking at drainage initiatives along the Texas coast, looking at Aransas County and the coastal bend area. They met with us, they met with the NAP district, they met with county representatives last week, and we are strongly recommending continuing in the Aransas County Stormwater Advisory Committee, using that as a conduit for all things related to stormwater runoff and drainage within our community. We've been working closely with County Road and Bridge, especially since Harvey, to ensure that our drainage projects complement one another. And we're looking at other strategies to ensure that our drainage requirements are the same throughout the county. And that is something we're not far off, but it would be better if we were both using the same standards, both inside and outside the city limits. And we're working with our engineering firm and County Road and Bridge to strengthen that relationship, to continue to support one another, to ensure that we're all on the same page when it comes to not only drainage within our community, but also stormwater runoff.
All of our projects are currently vetted with the Stormwater Advisory Committee.
All of our current drainage projects that are in our current drainage master plan have been approved with that advisory group. Yes, sir.
That is a great advisory group. It has every entity in it. And again, Mike tells me that when we develop a project, it goes to that committee to be reviewed. Any concerns voiced at that committee, we listen. It's a great committee.
On the drainage master plan, is that, I'm kind of making an assumption that we haven't done a master drainage plan since Harvey, correct?
We have not. We did originally in calendar year 2000, we developed the drainage master plan for the city of Rockport. In 2016, we did what's called a modeling report, where we added specific projects to the drainage master plan. And of course, we got hit by Harvey in 2017. What we're proposing here is to take a look at the drainage master plan overall to determine whether we need to completely upgrade it or maybe just do another modeling report and then add projects for drainage within the city of Rockport that are also in compliance with Aransas County and others within the community.
Okay, so it's really, look at everything.
Yes,
Do we
ma'am.
need to redo this, remodel it?
Yes, ma'am.
And, because as we know, drainage has changed since Harvey.
Absolutely, 100%. And what we're trying to do is, number one, get the best bang for our buck, and that's community-wide, the whole county, everyone inclusive. And, you know, I keep going back to it, but another component of drainage is stormwater runoff. And I've said it 100 times over, we're a peninsula, we're surrounded on three sides by water. When it rains, no matter what we do, no matter what type of drainage system we have, the runoff is going to end up in our waterways. And we have a responsibility to try to control it as best we can, to slow it down, to filter it before it gets to our waterways and those kinds of things, and working in conjunction with our partners to ensure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that when the water gets to the drainage, when the stormwater runoff gets to our waterways, that it's as clean as it can possibly be. But the other part is how much fresh water are we putting into our saltwater bays and harbor. And so, you know, those are things we need to look at as we go through these drainage projects. And of course, it's all dependent on Mother Nature and how much she gives us at one time and how quickly she gives it to us.
Any other questions on the streets and drainage? Okay, so the next one. Okay, this is parks. Now the first 1, 2, 3, 4 items there, the audience that says Ben Oaks Rookery Park. We don't have any option there. This particular bond specifically mentioned that park. So those dollars have to be spent on that park. The rest are per departmental request and prioritized according to the park's needs. You'll notice the total there is $407,000 versus the dollars available there at $405,000. So I could whittle down. I guess I just couldn't be there. I guess. And if you have any questions about any of those, be happy to answer them, or Rick can answer.
Rick, Magnolia Park, that's the, that building is what we're talking about there?
Correct.
And that's because it is quite termite infested, from what I understand.
That's correct. It has not been habitable since this route to Arden. Other than by the termites.
And for the public, if you want me to go down these by line, I'd be happy to read them, if that would help. Up to you guys.
Rick, there was, another, I thought there was another need, White Park, full resurface?
Question.
Yeah, are we, did I see that, I went reading things?
Well, again, these are how to spend the unspent funds.
Okay, so that was.
When we talk about other needs, that's probably how.
Okay, that's been, I'm sorry, jumping in.
That's good.
Yeah, these are just that $4.2 million that were unspent bond funds. This is how to spend those again. We'll talk about future needs. Next couple of slides. Okay. Any other questions about parks? Okay, very good. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so now let's move into the capital improvement plan for the next 5 to 10 years. We've talked about how do we spend the existing money that the taxpayers allowed us to have, and we're going to spend those on those projects that we've just gone through. Next up is let's look to the future. Let's look to the next 5 years and 10 years down the road, and what are those needs? This is a summary page, and I can put up here information, if you would like, for each area: PD, streets and drainage, fleet, and parks and aquatics. We have those if you want to go, if you want to see those. This is just a summary. So let's go to, let's put one up. Oh, before we do that, what I want you to see in the summary is under the column total 2 to 5 year, 23 through 27, $18.6 million, okay? Of that, you can see how that's broken down: $894,000 for PD, streets and drainage, $7.6 million, fleet, $86,000, parks and aquatics, $9 million, and then IT, over that period, $800,000. Now, we can talk about each of those individually, and I think we should, and I think we have the time that we should.
Can you go to the big item on parking aquatics, 25.6, the 8 million, 8.5 million?
Yeah, let's pull up parks and aquatics. That, she's gonna have to leave the, yes, the wheel in there. Okay, this is real hard for the public to see, but hopefully the council can see it here, and you have the spreadsheets in front of you and one that I passed out in advance. I'm gonna grab my sheet so I can see it. Okay, on the far left, you've got the project, then you've got a description, then you've got an estimated cost for every project. And then the first column there is the unspent funds that we just went through. So that column reflects what we just went through on the parks. Then you've got years 22 through 25, 26, and that's as far out as we went in parks, okay? So if you scroll down in the second column, I mean the third column, 22, 23, you go down to downtown Austin Street Restroom Park. Now, I guess what I need to tell you about that is that's new. And we may adopt a comprehensive, this is a great event. We'll ask you to adopt a a capital improvement plan for 5, 10 years. That doesn't mean that it's locked in stone, okay? In year 6, 7, or year 2 or 3, a community need may arise, okay? And you guys as council may say, hey, that's a higher priority than this project here. So this capital improvement plan is just that plan until we go to the voters and ask for approval on how to spend these funds. So this is a plan. And we'll spend a little bit more time talking about that particular project because that is one that has come up. It's been identified as a possible need, and I think it's a good one to talk about a plan that's just a plan. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Next up is the Community Aquatic Park Stadium Drive. That's 150, and I'll just let you look through those, or actually, let me read them. The Community Aquatic Park, replastering of the pool. This facility is approximately 20 years old, and the cost estimate on that is $150,000. I'm sure Rick can answer any questions.
Rick, we're not gonna be able to push that one out much farther than 23, 24. That's gonna be about the limit.
You know, so we've had professional pool contractors and companies out that have been looking at this for the last 5 years. And even though they said, you know, it looks okay, you might get another year, we've been hearing that about every year now. We do have some cracks in the large pool, currently. We are losing some water. It may go like that for another 2 or 3 years, or it may break down tomorrow. So you have to do some maintenance on that before we get to that point. Once it gets to that point, you're looking at a whole lot of more money to recover that pool. So we're gonna have to break down an old machine before it breaks down, basically.
The next item is updated park master plan, and that's estimated cost of $75,000. And you're good there.
Do you know the Parks Master Plan?
If you're going to seek state funding, any type of state funding, you have to have a parks master plan, and it needs to be updated every 5 years.
Oh.
Right.
So the timing on these, obviously, we've set them in time. Those can be changed if council chooses a different priority. Then you've got, also at the Community Aquatic Park, multi-use court for vacant skate park pad. Selected activities will determine cost, and we put the number in there, $200,000. Okay, the next one is at Memorial Park, coating the entire hike and bike trail, 1.63 miles. This will preserve and extend the life of the asphalt, and that is estimated at $300,000. And the next project there is Mathis Park, to build a parking lot for park users, and that's estimated at $100,000. That's where we're at right now. Can't really see that. Okay. Then the next up is Memorial Park, also a parking lot overlay with road repairs, and $150,000 there. Then there's the next item is sports complex. This is the 42-acre park that was purchased for establishing a sports complex facility in a preliminary engineering report. So that's a large number. That's $8 million. And so That is something you guys should discuss. You could fully develop that as a sports complex for $8 million. Is that what the community needs? Is that what this council desires? Could you spend less than that? Could you spend $2 million and open it up as green space? Trails, that type of thing. So you have lots of options here. Just because that number's here doesn't mean that's the number that you have to use. With that, I'll shut up and listen for a second.
Well, the original plan was to develop that with grant money, and that was pretty hard. And I think the only part of that we've accomplished is the gun range at the end of the back of the property. And we did get a bonus from when the Mennonites were in there, repaired, or took the pool out, built that building, repaired it, the house and things. So that's money that we didn't have to spend. But again, this whole idea, I think, the plan, and this goes back to Tom Haley working on this plan years ago. We had 3 or 4 ball fields, parking, and concession stands.
That's right, it was a true soft field sports complex, 4 fields. A true sports complex, softball fields, 4 with a concession area in the center. And then besides that, we had 2 of the practice fields, a total of 6 fields are going to be put into the plan to do that. We had all that just prior to Harvard. I mean, 2 weeks prior to Harvard, I think it was done. Just the plans were presented to the Parks Board and then Harvard. At that time, the estimated cost at that time was about $6 million. So that was pre-Harvey. Everything else gone up like it is today. Yeah, I think that $8 million is a pretty good number to use there. But again, we don't have to spend $8 million, as Mr. Morgan talked about earlier. It can be a $2 million project and open up that park. It can be used. We've talked about having a lot of open space and natural spaces that does offer that. I can tell you right now that I've been approached by some people, such as the disc golf people. They'd love to go out there and put an 18-hole disc golf course out there that could possibly attract tournaments and stuff. You know, it doesn't. Those people aren't. They're not looking for fancy stuff. They want the challenge, and that certainly offers the challenge. But it also offers other opportunities. This is a birding community as well, and that offers plenty of that out there. What's happening now at Memorial Park is that we're kind of overcrowding one interest over the other. Birders like quiet things. They're out to see those birds that they don't see anywhere else, and this offers that. At Memorial Park, you've got walkers using the asphalt trail, the natural trails. It's just, in my opinion, we've outgrown that. And with all the buildings I see up on 3036 and more to come, I'm sure, you know, we need to spread that out somehow.
One of the unplanned advantages we got when we acquired that property is it's now protected from development. We don't have to worry about someone coming in with some type of retail or you know, car lots. You know, whatever, all the things you see out in the bypass. Very nice community.
Now, if we get lucky some of the time, we might think about it.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet, but this is a good opportunity to discuss this, because we're talking about parks, and I know visiting with you one-on-one, that a couple of you have voiced to me, hey, could we sell the park or other city properties? So let's talk about that. Yes, you could sell this property. You have to jump through some hoops to do so, because you bought it through bond funds. And depending on its size, the state law speaks to how you can sell it. But if you were to sell it, you would have to put the funds towards parks. That said, I'm a former Parks and Rec guy, okay? I'm biased. But I will tell you this, that land is never cheaper than it is now because you own it. And if you ever need future park property, that's it. So you can't buy it any cheaper than you have it now. That's all I'll say. Rick may have a thought on that.
Yeah, so I was asked that question about, my thoughts on selling that property. And I knew that by selling it, that money would have to go back into parks. So what would that do? It would, sure, we could buy maybe some land around our current Memorial Park and expand that park. What we need is open space right now. We don't have enough space in our parks currently. So that would require purchase of land. You'd have to put in a parking lot. And I'm just referring to Memorial Park because the majority of that money will go at Memorial Park. And I'm assuming that that's where the council would want to put it. And then we have to basically clear it, a big portion of it, to open up some green space, because that's what we don't have enough of now. The sports complex, or the property that we're talking about, offers that currently. There currently is a lot of wooded space, and currently is a lot of open space. So, again, Mr. Morton talked about earlier, we can't buy it for any cheaper than we have it now. Sure, I think that if we sold it, we could improve not just Memorial Park, but every park within the city. A lot of our parks are small parks, neighborhood parks. You're limited to what you can do there. You can add a playground, a small parking lot, a couple of cabanas, but you're very limited to what you can do there. But I really do think that if we sold it, Memorial Park would get the bulk of that money, and it would improve that park for the future. But I think having sports property, the bypass is something that you really need to think about before we think about selling that. Not just for our immediate future, what's needed now in the next 5 years, but 10, 15 years down the road, when we're not here, and there is no space around us anymore to put in things that people want to come to town for. We talked about people coming to Rockport, a lot of them want to come here, quality of life. Parks are quality of life. A park, if you don't have a park in a community, it's not that nice. People have to get out with their kids, and kick the ball around. Those of you who've been here a long time know what Memorial Park looked like 20 years ago, what it looks like today. You wouldn't recognize it. It's a big improvement. And we continue to improve that. But that can be the same thing we have over at the property on the bypass. We start off slowly and not want to invest the $8 million, but a lower number to what we at least open up that park for 10 years. So we can utilize it. It's there.
Talking to two parks guys here, one from Sugar Land previously. In that area, we use parks as detention areas. We, put soccer fields and everything, maybe not necessarily the baseball, softball fields, but maybe that could be something we could tie into to help some drainage issues over there. I don't know, just a thought. We have 42 acres, and I don't want to clear cut it all, obviously, but, if we do the parks and everything in there, you could use it as detention when needed. Obviously, we need a heavy rain event, not just but we see it all the time. Sugar Land has it.
Sure. Utilizing sports fields, particularly soccer fields, is used all over the state where you can take advantage of a low-lying area and provide a recreational opportunity for your citizens, understanding that that area is going to flood or retain water, but that's excellent use for it. I don't know the topography, so I can't stand up there and say, hey, yeah, that's perfect for it, but that's certainly one of the uses.
There are some ponds out there.
Yeah, there's some lower, there's some ponds out there. I don't want to just be a mosquito breeding grounds, but,
No, and that's right, there are some natural wetland areas over there, and that was part of the plan when they introduced it to us, and doing some observation areas and decks and bridges and stuff like that, so.
you know, with that, the money that we're looking at, as opposed to just green space, you know, we could maybe piggyback into some drainage stuff in it too as well. I don't know, but that's down the road. Item 24, are we not taking care of that with 21, 22 budget? The item 24 is going to be the entry road and parking lot overlay and road repair. At 150, will that be taken care of with the 200 for entry road and parking?
You're kind of losing me here, which,
For the CIP that we're using,
Which year? That'll help us.
on one,
Okay.
It's the 25, 26 years of parking lot overlay.
oh yeah, item 24.
So you're talking about the 200 that we said we were going to, that you guys approved?
Yes, sir.
Then I'll refer. I'm not sure.
so the parking lot overlay at Memorial Park,
But I've got it twice. The parking lot overlay and road repairs at Memorial Park for $150,000 in year 25, 26.
Yeah, if it's on there twice, we'll figure out why.
I don't remember which page.
On the project recommendations for unspent bonds, there's a memorial park.
No, go back to the summary page. Well, I can probably do it here. On the PowerPoint presentation, go up. Keep going.
Right there. Right there.
Right.
Item number 2. Is that the same?
so
Is that the same thing?
No.
Okay.
My understanding was when we did the budget for 22 was that 200,000 was to improve the entry into the park and tie it technically to roads because the bond money that was going to be using is for streets and drainage. And so it was the actual road going in and out of the park rather than the parking lot itself. So these are kind of two different pieces. But that's one of the items that you guys do have the opportunity to reallocate if you chose to do so. The 200,000, we did put it in the budget and allocated this year. That doesn't mean we have to spend it in the 22 budget. You could reallocate it and spend it differently.
I'm remembering an overlay of the existing park lot by the senior field, tying all the way over to where the old basketball courts, tennis courts were. Not where the courts were.
right, so that was, we talked about that, I believe, last year. And that was to add a new parking lot.
Okay.
There wouldn't be a parking lot overlay.
Okay.
The overlay, we're talking about the existing, because it needs some help. It needs some help. It's living pretty good. Yes, that's what we're hoping to do. Correct.
Our chip seal program for this year is going to consist of helping the Parks Department with that parking lot. You know, we work in conjunction with Aransas County every year, and we go out and we chip seal a certain portion of our community. We've got it divided into 7-year increments. This year, we're going to focus on some areas that need attention, and one of them is going to be the parking lot at Memorial Park. And we're going to work in conjunction with Aransas County. They have the trucks that have the material. We purchase the material from the county. We utilize our trucks and our crews in conjunction with the Aransas County Road and Bridge and go out and do the chip seal on our streets. And last year we chip sealed Linden Street, and we think we added about 5 years of life to that street, so we can prolong the resurfacing of that street.
So I guess we just run through either Rick or Mike, we all tell you what the entry road parking, that 200,000 that we did on.
So I believe the entry project was actually more of an we've been talking about that, and I've heard talked about the past 12, 13 years. And that was to create an exit lane, a right turn only lane, widen the entry. So people that are gonna be going to the right, exiting the park, for people to do that, not have to wait at the traffic light. So basically make it safer for people that are in the park. That was gonna be that project.
Textile participate in that at all? Since we're,
Textile will have to participate in that, because we're gonna be exiting their ditch.
okay. So I guess that's in the part, where it says parking right there, is that part of where it says up rubber? Or that?
The existing parking lot, yes.
Okay.
So going back to the $8 million, if we're gonna do that for the sports complex on bypassing Corpus Christi.
Yes, and remember those three different spreadsheets that Mr. Henderson put up? One was 12 million, one was 15 million, and one was 18 million. That 18 million, 18.65 million included the full 8 million. Okay, so if you cut that at all, then you can reach the 12 or 15.
Well, I do know, growing up on softball fields across northern Illinois, that actually running a softball complex is actually expensive. Because I think, Rick, you and I were talking, like, you were gonna have 2 or 3 more people minimum in order to maintain it, not including concessions, not including this, not including that, not including this. And you put all the softball fields in with required fencing and benching and stuff, you just got rid of all the open space. My opinion, I may be wrong, I don't know. Anyway, I like the idea of open field sports, like, frisbee golf and the other types of things, because those need space. And you can do things in between everything and all those other things, and of course, more bird areas, wetland protection, always wetland protection, tree protection, blah, blah, blah. So maybe going in that direction may be better for that piece of property, so we're getting some use out of it instead of just maintaining it.
That's correct, and you're right. If we ran a true sports complex out there, you've got maintenance out there 7 days a week, like we currently do at every one of our other parks. But a sports complex, a true sports complex, demands a lot more. It demands a lot more irrigation, fertilization. I mean, you're going to have to put man hours out there, and we're going to have to look for some real professionals to keep that. And it's going to cost. So again, scaling back, that doesn't mean that you can't, like in the open space can be, you can put in temporary backstops if you create open space for either soccer or baseball. But everybody gains if you go that route, not just your people playing softball. Everybody gets to use that property, whether they play baseball, frisbees, walking their dog out, whatever they're doing. But it opens up that park to every user, to whatever their interest is. And I just think that says a lot about Rockport. And we still keep with the natural feel kind of look and feeling that people are starving for because of the big cities.
So, thank you, Ms. Jackson, for that. Any consideration of what you shared, cutting back the 8 million, leaving the 8 million?
I like it. I think it also adds to the south side. We don't really have anything of size on the south side of town.
No, there are some positives to running or having a sports complex. It brings big dollars in the community. Hopefully, but you've got our neighbors to the south of here. They've got some very, very nice fields. I don't know how busy those fields are. I tried to get some research on that, and I wasn't able to. But I believe the city of Corpus here a couple of years ago were talking about big megaplex sports complex, And that fell through, maybe because they were hoping that maybe they would, they build, I think they were scared to take that step, that investment, and not be able to attract the people and get some of that money back.
Yes, Bob?
A lot of good information.
Okay. Well, we'll leave in the plan today, and when we bring back a future action item, you can direct us to cut it, minimize it, or leave it. Okay? So, Kimberly, let's go to the street fund, streets and drainage, this one. That's your deal. Yeah, that's true. You make that bigger? Oh, no, that's not true. It's a green color. There you go. Okay. So one of the things we have built in to this capital improvement plan is ongoing replacement over time. And I think even if you've not identified a project, you should have an annual replacement program for your streets, annual replacement program for drainage pipes in the ground. So we've included that in this plan as well. And we've included about $500,000 a year for each year for 10 years. But let's go down this list, and if you have any questions of me or Mike can answer. Austin Street rebuild, $3.5 million to do that. And we show that being funded in 23-24. I don't think there's any doubt that that road needs help. There's also a water line project underneath it that you don't, if you're not going to do the road, you don't do that water line. You certainly don't do the water line before you do, after you do the road. So, any questions on Austin Street?
This is my pet peeve project. Austin Street is our front porch, and I've been saying that for a long, long time. And we've been beating the bushes trying to find some grant funding to get in there and do something with Austin Street. A long time ago, I say 10 years ago when I first got here, there was, I guess, a little bit of controversy about the bulb outs and the medians on Austin Street. Over the years, we've had questions about whether or not we should be running the parades up and down Austin Street with the bulb outs and the medians there and everything else. Recently, we went and talked to a handful of merchants and stuff down there, getting some ideas and thoughts from them about what they'd like to see Austin Street look like in the future. And, it's kind of an open slate. I've got my own personal opinions about the potential for taking out the median and widening the streets and, milling it up and putting a decent surface down. Everybody that comes to our community goes to Austin Street, whether you're here to fish, whether you're here for festivals, whether you're here for art, the culture, whatever it is, everybody goes down Austin Street. To get to the base stands, you gotta go to Austin Street. To get to the shops, you go to Austin Street. To go to the galleries, you go to Austin Street. That's where everything happens within our community. And we've got to do something to improve that road surface. No matter what, I think this year we're gonna focus on a chip seal, where we're gonna go in and fill the potholes up, pack them down as best we can, and then try to level the surface out with a chip seal, very similar to what we're gonna do at the parking lot at Memorial Park. And we're gonna try to do that with this year's seal coat funds. But this is a very, very important project for our community.
Any questions for Mike on Austin Street?
Austin Street.
Okay.
You guys have a question on Austin Street?
In the comp plan, one of the things it shows for the downtown area is basically that road being Denver and creating like a green space, or green spaces on the sidewalks, road inverted, so your drainage would be down the middle.
We could do a streetscape and get someone to come in and do some landscape architectural, design up and down Austin Street, do something with the lighting. If we take the median out, take the lights, I know that really disappoints folks at Rock Bottom. They won't have anything to back into on Saturday. ideas right now, but if we were to take out that medium, move the street, the lights to, you know, to the sides and do something with, you know, someone to go down there and do some architectural streetscaping and put some green space there, whether it's in boxes or however they do it, we could really dress it up and make it what it's supposed to be for our community.
Would that be something we go with the Heritage District, you know, get the buy-in from the shop owners and everybody?
Absolutely, working with the Cultural Arts District, you know, I know that these two ladies, Ms. Jackson and Ms. Day over here, they've been up and down Austin Street talking to people for years, and, you know, we all see the importance of it, and, you know, we're just looking for the funding source to get it done. You know, we can put our heads together, come up with ideas, come up with a concept, you know. Of course, the first thing is, what's our budget? You know, find out how much money we have to work with, and then do something. And then, you know, later on, we talked about other projects, the downtown restroom project that we're looking at and things like that. Just something to enhance our area downtown.
Now, I would think the first thing on this, though, is we have to get a engineer type person.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, hopefully someone who's done this type of manicured manufactured street, who has a good idea what we could and could not do, and then blah, 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 and go forward from there.
Sure, that would be part of the design process, where we would, again, want to go into the engineering with the merchants in mind, let them participate, bring plans to you guys, consider, hopefully with their consensus, and move a plan forward. You can't do anything until you fund it.
But I do have to agree with Mike, is that this has been on somebody's plate for a very long time, whoever it may be. Right. We can't keep pushing off infrastructure, and that's our showpiece down there.
This was important, and Mr. Morton mentioned it a while ago. We have a very old water line that runs down Austin Street, and when we are going to fix the street, then that water line would also be repaired and removed and reinstalled with a new water line up and down Austin Street. It would also be an excellent opportunity to put in some additional drain boxes along Austin Street to help with sheeting the water away from the businesses and such.
Yeah, right now, the crown of the road is pretty high.
Right now,
It goes right to the front
it's going the
doors.
wrong way.
Yeah. And, you know, relocate or replace that water line, do that to protect some water valves.
Absolutely, like I said, we've had that item, you know, kind of off to the side in our capital improvement budget for public works for a long time, understanding that, you know, eventually we need to do something with the street. And like Richard said, you don't go dig the water line up and put a new water line in after you've just rebuilt the street. So you want to do it in conjunction with.
The next line there is construction and upgrades to substandard roads. That would be an annual program to not only bring some of our annex streets up to par, but also as an ongoing street replacement for substandard streets. That's something we've built in at $500,000 a year. Then you've got a street master plan and pavement assessment at $100,000. And if you have questions on that, I can answer those. Then there is a specific project here, Trailer Street pavement repairs, and that's estimated at $145,000. And then we have annual drainage system improvements at $500,000 a year as well. And then, again, the update the drainage master plan, that was in the estimated, that was in the unspent column. So that's it for streets and drainage. Unless you have any questions for Mike. All right.
The Treasure Street one, is that right there with the box culvert goes underneath that long range curve?
Yes, that is one, we've been mentioning this several times today, but we met with Twin Coast Texas Initiatives. They were in our community last week, they met with us. They have some long-term plans for our community, and drainage is a big one. And they were looking at the potential drainage channel that runs directly down Trailer Street at that junction box that you're talking about. If you go into the parking lot of Ace Hardware and look towards Fulton Beach Road, if we were to run a box culvert all the way down Trailer Street, starting behind Ace Hardware, and route a portion of Tule Creek, which dumps into Aransas Bay, dumps into Little Bay, out to Aransas Bay, it would alleviate some of the stormwater runoff. And so if we were going to do that project in conjunction with all of our partners within our community and Clean Coast Texas initiatives, we could find a funding source that would help us with this Trailer Street project. So that's something we're looking at. Anytime we spend other people's money in our community to the benefit of our community, we need to take advantage of it.
All right, does anybody need a break? Okay. Mayor, you okay with giving a final? Sure.
Time is 3:54, and we're in recess for 10 minutes.
Thank you. Y'all need any water or anything?
Yes, we go straight to the council meeting. I'm out of orders to do. So I'll buy.
Wait, what's the date?
Wait, hold on, that's not what it says.
We'll see. I'll try to talk less.
I will take it.
We have protein
You can
snacks.
ask all the questions you need to. I'm sure that we're going to. Mayor, we good to go?
Yes, we are. Time is 4:07. We're in access.
Okay, next up, we're gonna take a look at, and this is not a very big one, but the fleet page. Yeah. Most of the funding for the fleet, we accomplished in the unspent funds, leaving only a generator for Fleet 1 and Fuel Island at $86,500. I just couldn't fit it into the unspent funds, so we're gonna do it. We need to put it in play. That's what that's about. Mike, any more wisdom on that one?
No, sir, I'm happy to answer any questions, but like I said, the backup generator for that side of the fleet, we have a Laurel Street complex that has a generator. That generator, we could probably look for funding to replace it, but an additional backup generator would run the fleet department and our fuel source if we had an outage.
That was not one of the ones you can find grants for, correct? It's not that.
We're still, like I said, we're beating the bushes every day for grant funding on anything associated with emergencies, and generators is a big one.
Got it. Just because it's on this list doesn't mean we don't continue to seek outside funding. Okay, next up, let's pull up PDs. The chief is just taking a bite of I'm going to speak less and just open it up for questions. And the chief can certainly answer those questions. The total amount there is $894,000. To be spent over the first 5 years.
One I want to talk about, Chief, is the range upgrade and expansion. I know that you and I chatted about that in general terms, but not anything specific. But I distinctly remember saying that the upgrades that you're wanting to do out there, Delmar would be more than willing to help us pay for it, since that's where their lease academy people go for their upgrade stuff.
Yes, no, we've got a great relationship with Delmar. We do a lot of training with them, or at their facilities, and in turn, they use our range quite extensively. So they would actually provide the building. One of the things that we face is there are new utilities out there. So our cost would be basically to run electricity, to run the water, and then we can put septic out there. I think that can be done pretty affordably. That's the cost that we estimate in there. And then they would provide basically better than a portable building, but in the code, we have to have a bathroom in it, and we need a bathroom in it. Right now, we use a porta potty out there. And so, again, it would meet our needs to have a classroom. Right now, when we do training, we have to do that at the police department and then pick up everything and go back out to the range. So we meet all of our needs out there, and of course, Delaware, they're in the same predicament. So they have a vested interest in that. So it would be a big game changer for us to have that ability. Something that we're doing is trying to move, with the staffing, it's difficult for us to pull officers off the street to do various trainings throughout the year. So with everything from fitness to taser recertifications, officer firearms, all that, to pack that into one training day, perhaps once a quarter, and get that all done at once, but it's difficult if I don't have the facility to do that all in one space. So big help to get that done. It's one of our bigger needs.
Have we started on the camera system, the body cams and camera, and car cam?
We are exploring different providers right now. The challenge we will face there, of course, we've had the body cam camera systems that we have right now, and they're good. They serve us pretty well. They're at end of life, so we do have to make a decision. There's Axon, of course, we work with WatchGuard. There's all these platforms. If we were to move to a new brand, well, the hurdle there is our storage with all the videos that we have right now. We would have to have that legacy system and then have something new like we went Axon or one of the other brands, where we have that new video. But I don't want that to lock us into only sticking with it. We're only going to use this one brand. I want to do an RFP and see what other market offerings there are, because there could be something better. But for sure, I want to have what we have now, where the vehicle camera system is linked to the body camera system. So you basically have sort of a movie production, if you will, so that when Mike and I go to a call, I have 4 camera angles, his vehicle and my vehicle. And then if he comes from this side and I walk straight to, I have 4 camera angles and a lot of audio, plus the backseat of the vehicle is all linked to the same case number and everything linked in, so I can see a ton of perspectives on that one call. Our system provides that, but it's somewhat rudimentary. It's sort of first generation of that. Well, now all these brands, they just step that game up pretty well. I think WatchGuard does a great job of it. But I want to look at everything that's out there, and I don't want it to hold us back, that we want to just stay with where our videos are. But that may cost a little more money to get a new system and either transfer videos or hold on to an old system. So there's a lot of stuff in play with that. We project that to be around $200,000 getting into it. Then you're going to have prescription. You're going to have subscription fees to store that video. One thing I'll applaud IT for is that we've got a lot of storage room. And one of the things that other agencies really struggle with is storing video. And so they have to set retention dates. That hey, if we don't have this video, we don't need it for evidence, it's going to go away. And they typically hold it for 90 days or something like that. Well, I've got enough room right now to hold video for really ever. So that if something comes up and I need to view a video that's 9 months old, I'm going to have it, or even longer. So that's the big picture with that. But that is my number one need right now. So right now we're just exploring the market offerings, and as soon as we get going here into this, we'll put out an RFP and see what's available for us.
Okay. I was thinking with our fleet, as personal vehicles, obviously, chemical company are going to be supplying the vehicles. Give me a cop car. So I was trying to figure out the timing of it. If we are to switch systems.
We'll retrofit whatever's out there, and then whenever we price a vehicle, we try to price it with it's a full turnkey thing. The only thing that's not in there is the radio, but that's something that has to be pieced out, and that's another item here that I'll talk about, but that's an unavoidable thing. But no matter what camera system comes in, all of the upfitters that do police vehicles, they ask you who are you with on your cameras, and they have a sort of in stock. And when the vehicle gets to us,
it's ready to go.
It's got lights, it's got the trunk vault, it's got everything ready to go. So it's a good feature.
But your observation was she does it, it's good.
They got install already, then we're ready. Yep. Yeah, exactly. One of the big things too are gun racks. I'll make sure that those, and again, they ask you what rifle you have, what's that look like, and they install that ready to go.
So I see your other high on the list item is this phone computer download training software, but it has a zero direct cost. Can you just explain why that?
Well, I anticipated being able to find that for free, and I did. One of our civilian investigative assistants came back last week and was able to obtain that. I think she went to Georgia, or so zero is not accurate. We paid some per diem and paid some travel money, but she came back and had brought back software licensing, and it's not Celebrite. We have that as well. There's another company, another software system, and then there's 3 different ones. I have to look at those to tell you, but one of the problems that we would have is if we have a cell phone that was evidentiary for us, we would have to send that to another agency, and the problem there is now we get in line and we have to wait. With her training right now that she has is new, and now we have that software. We do that all ourselves, and we can also support other agencies. If another agency needs us to help them, we can do that. We have the ability right now to get into an unlocked phone. One of the other software pieces that she'll be getting pretty soon can get us into some locked phones, depends on it. Now, of course, our job now that she's back and what I'm beginning to work on is policy for that. We're very conscious of people's privacy rights, and so that's a powerful tool that she has coming back with that. And so we're in a public forum, I want to make sure the public knows that it's not something we take lightly, and so that's only going to be used in the appropriate circumstances. And one of the questions I get quite often is, do you have to have a search warrant? And yes, you do. There's only 5 exceptions that the courts recognize. 2 search warrants under the 4th Amendment. Everybody believed in the early 2000s that cell phones would be a 6th exception, and that did not go. The Supreme Court ruled that there is no exception for a cell phone. So part of our policy is, in all cases, you must get a search warrant for a cell phone. And so I'm writing those policies now that we have that ability to, before we put this software into play, we'll have that policy up and running. Just for gee whiz, the last exception that the Supreme Court granted was Carroll v. United States. It's the vehicle exception rule, and I think it was 1921, the bootleg case. If you care to know that it was Treasury agents. So again, there's not many times where the police can search without a warrant. Cell phones, we believe, when they first became big, it's a powerful tool. And so, to answer your question, we now have that. We found it for free, other than travel costs and some per diem.
Good job.
Awesome.
Awesome.
We're doing our best to even when I sent this to the city manager, we wanted to try to chip away at what we could. I'm an impatient person, and so we were already working on some of these. One of the big ticket items is the radio tower upgrade. I'm already questioning, that predates me, and I don't know. So we're by ourselves on the radio system we have. All the other agencies use a different system, and so a meeting we had recently working with the county, I kind of question why we're not on the same system as everybody else. There may be a great reason, but before we spend $400,000 on upgrading the tower that we have, I want to know that that's in our best interest, and it's in the best interest of the city and of all of us together, because we have a great working relationship with the county. We're in a combined dispatch center in between myself and the dispatch center manager and meeting with the sheriff. I can't say that we're not going to have to do that. We're getting to the point where we either have to do that or we have to do something, but there may be a cheaper way for that. So even though, like the city manager said, this is just a plan, but that cost may come off of there as well and be cheaper if we take a different route. But we're exploring different ways to deal with some of these costs.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chief? Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, we don't really have a backup, but let's talk about IT for a minute. On the summary page, you'll see that it built in $200,000 a year. Can you go back to the summary page? There you go. $200,000 a year. What does that constitute? Well, I know there is a need for a fiber backbone throughout the city. The funding for that could be possibly through the call. I attended a meeting with the mayor on a presentation of that. But short of that, I just didn't want to lose track of that. That's why that's there. And that's it for the general fund. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go one more before we talk about that. One more. Okay. So since we're still in the general fund, I want to talk about this project. This is a project that popped up. As I said earlier, you can adopt a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, but there are going to be projects that pop up during the course of our history. Yes?
Can I just, I know you guys want to talk about, I think we should go to rate increases.
Yeah, we'll get back to
We want
that.
to get back to that. Okay, so make sure.
This project is still in the general fund before we jump over to utilities. Now, I promise we'll get back to it.
Making sure.
Thanks for catching me. So this is one of the projects that I don't think is on anybody's radar map, but I think it's a project that was brought to staff by a council member, which is very close to the merchants down Austin Street. And there is a need for a restroom facility in that area. So we had a nice meeting with staff and Councilperson Jackson, and we talked about different ways to get there. And what we zeroed in on as a possibility was, hey, we could close down Main Street from Austin to Water Street. We already own the property. And we could close it down at very little cost, place a bathroom facility on that location. And that location could also be used for street festivals, merchants, much like they're going to be doing here in the near future. So I just wanted to bring this up, so that you'll hear about it for the first time to talk about it. There's no funding identified for it. We have a possible option. It's either in the CIP, if you want to include it, or we'll talk about another option. But here's what it could look like, and I'm going to try to go to the next slide. Okay. So once it's done, this is what it might look like. All right? But the bathroom facility that we're talking about might look a little bit different. There's been that much on the other side than it's been on bathroom. No, we envision putting something like we have in our parks, the prefabricated bathrooms, something like that. So we could develop it as a like I said, a nice street festival type area and provide restrooms down on Austin Street. Okay? Or you could develop it as another just green space for people to relax. So there's all kinds of options there. And that's really all I wanted to do, to bring up. But let's talk about possible funding. I said we can move it into the CIP, or we'll talk about an alternate funding source, and that's really something you guys should talk about. So let's talk about it. It was thrown out there that could we use hot funds to develop this park, this pocket park? And the answer is yes, you could. Do you have the hot funds to do it? And we're estimating this at about $500,000. Probably less than that, but that bathroom alone is rated about $200,000.
That's correct.
And if you want to dress up the area, I just don't want to be short funds, so that's why I'm saying $500,000. So what was raised was, you have a fund balance in your hotel motel tax fund. Could you use that, part of that fund balance to do this project? And the answer is yes, you could. With that, I'm going to, again, step back and let you guys discuss. Ms. Jackson, any thoughts?
Maybe not well, since I don't want to brought this up. Yeah, merchants, they've been trying for a long time to get a bathroom down there, because there's a lot of traffic down there, a lot of people, and there are bathrooms that are open to the public, but And we really should be providing some kind of restroom facility down there, as it is a major attraction to the city. And so well, let me see what I can do. The first question I asked was about hot dogs. And went, well, and then Katie came back with, we could probably do it out of the excess beyond our 365 days that we keep in reserve. That's still a true statement? Okay, awesome. And, then we got to banging all kinds of ideas off each other. It actually was a fun meeting. And, but I think if we put a bathroom down there, we could possibly do a small stage area. We could do, tables and benches. We could do a whole lot of things to make that specific area into a pocket park, which we need. And we could still keep the street vendors there, we could still do this. There's a lot of things that can be done in that roughly, what is it, 80 feet? 80-foot roadway. So that's the idea, so that we can get the merchants something that they really do need down there. It's not a want, it's a need.
We looked at other properties that the city might own. On the property behind Austin Street.
The old gas building.
The old gas building. So we looked at that and said, that might be a little bit too off the beaten path for the merchants over there. There is an existing building that we don't own. What building is that?
That was the J&J sign? What is that sign company doing there?
CJ Sign Company. CJ.
So that would involve a possible purchase. When we looked at this, we said, we own this property. This is a public right of way, and we have the ability to make this happen. So this seems like a win-win. You can still provide access to the backside, which we hope develops off of the other streets there. So this is a good possibility.
Was there any concern, I know the guys had concern at one point about keeping those roads open to access harbor front? Is that?
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about potential development of the Bass property and what might happen with Water Street in the future and everything else. And we still believe that this would fit with their future plans. And again, we don't know exactly what their future plans are, but that we would be well off Water Street enough to where whatever they did when they developed the other side of the fence, so to speak, with Bass property down there in conjunction.
I remember one of the concerns when I met with them in Fort Worth was fire, police safety,
Right.
and access in that property, get that out through there.
You've
We
got
also discussed emergency services being able to get in and out.
You've got access up here, and possibly, you've got a couple access points here.
The plan is to move Water Street on the other side of the fence.
I don't know if it's gonna go completely on the other side of the fence, but it is gonna move. It's gonna be wide. Yeah, I think the original footprint of Water Street is wider than what you see down there today. The original footprint of that street and everything, it's overgrown in such an area.
I think it would be wise to meet with Bass property folks and sit down with them and say, hey, this is an idea where we're headed, if we have any concerns.
In that Crane property, is it? I thought that was Bass property, it's not, right?
No,
I know Robin now is Bass.
I'm not, is Brother Maui,
Liz.
one's West? I think we know.
We closed North Street for our cash, I'm sorry, City Yards.
So we have to maintain vehicle.
Right, that was a Paseo, but it also has to be from the vehicle accessibility.
Right, I'm thinking future stuff going on the waterfront. So we've got North Street closed. I think it's a great idea. My only concern would be that would leave us Wharf and then Market would be our two entry points into Water Street.
The plan is to take Peter all the way to Water Street also. As far as
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that there's,
the best plans.
we have, maybe that's a plan for us to, if they ever develop that. would affect that NAV property as well. The NAV district portion of that. No, but closing Main, closing Main Street. Water Street still on. That property. I mean, so basically that market to water, to water. I'm good with it. I would say that maybe we approach both those entities, Bass and NAV, and say, hey, listen, we're going to create a pocket park, make it look real nice and everything, provide another entity down there. But we should advise. And it's all
It
thing.
would be advisable to work with everyone down there.
Yes.
We want to buy into one of the merchants, that they understand what we're doing. Of course, citizen input, and then, you know, the navigation district has property down there, and then the developers for the Bass property, and just show them what our plans are. As, you know, does anyone have any major concerns with this for emergency accessibility or anything else that would contradict what they might want to do?
I think it would be a really cool amenity down there.
It'd be a little venue, it would be a small place, it's now closed off to traffic, and.
I don't think there's a whole lot of vehicles to travel, if we put a traffic count on
Right.
Main Street right there.
The only thing is, if we close that off, all that parking would go away. And that's why when we looked at the old gas building, our thought was, because that's where the access council building is, and then make that parking.
Good use of the property.
It's our property.
Is that sold, listed? Say again?
That property still listed
For sale?
I don't know if it, I know at one time we engaged the realtor.
I know we had to renew the contract a couple of times.
Yeah, but I don't know. We haven't had any bites, I can tell you that.
Okay, we had a couple of people looking at it.
Yeah.
Years ago, we didn't work out.
Well, thank y'all for listening to this. I know it's new to you, but I think it's a good example of, hey, they have a plan, but something that always pops up. Okay.
Let the other house do it.
We can build one.
All right, we're going to move back to the capital improvement plan and possible revenue bonds. Bob talked to you about whether you issue debt for general fund and that are tax supported, and then if you're going to issue debt for your utilities, well, then you're looking at revenue bonds, and they have to be supported with your utility rate. So we're going to have the same discussion we had on individual departments. Water has needs, wastewater has needs, and then gas has needs. This is just that summary page. And if you look at total for years 2 through 5, you're looking at 16 million there. And then years 6 through 10, another 14 million. But a large chunk of that, you can see there, is the gas company. The gas company alone, you're looking at $18 million in needs, required compliance needs to bring that up. So that's why when we talk about selling city property, this is one we need to think about. And that's why we built that $50,000 in there to work with an industry consultant. Okay, let's put up the utilities details.
On that 5 and 10 CIP on the wastewater, we've annexed going back for a long time, we've annexed the property that we don't provide some city services to. If we are able to find fire on the gas, I'd love to see us add some, utilize that money to run sewer, to get some of our areas off the sewer. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
I don't know if it's in our long range plans, but it needs to be, we did add it a long time ago.
Well, in this plan for water and wastewater, we built in an annual replacement and or upgrade of $500,000 a year. Is that enough?
No.
We could do $1 million a year. It's just how much.
Well, if we get rid of the gas, or the gas companies.
Yeah. So let's look at water real quick. That first item there is downtown water line replacement. That's the water line that Mike and I talked about under Austin Street. Again, you don't really fund that until you fund the redo of the street. Then we've got a water line replacement program there, $500,000 a year. And that's basically it, guys. Again, we could be a lot more aggressive than $500,000 a year, but that's what we're plugged in. And again, the ratepayers have to be able to fund this. Okay. Any questions on the water side? Okay, on the wastewater side, let's look past the unspent funds. We already talked about the wastewater treatment plant, so we're going to look at years 2023 and on. Again, we have a sewer line replacement program there at $500,000 a year. Then we've got a new equipment purchase. This is not a replacement, so it would be a new item. And Mike's still evaluating on whether we need that particular piece of equipment or not, but it is a front-end articulator that will be used at the plant at a cost of $120,000. Then there's a huge project, the force main from First Street to Gagnon Street of $2 million. And that is needed. Okay. Wastewater. Any questions for Mike in that area? Okay. And then the last thing there is the natural gas plant. And we show $18 billion there just to come into compliance, mandatory compliance on our gas system. We have a lot of steel pipe in the ground, and we are obligated to replace that over time.
I'm just curious, how many natural gas users are there?
You know exactly.
Because I have no idea.
I want to say we've got, I know we've got over 10,000
There's
water
11,000
meters.
water.
And we've probably got close to 6,000 maybe?
I think it's like 3,500 plus 900 or more.
Yeah, and that's another issue. Part of our gas system is over the Coconut Bay Bridge out in Lamar. And that portion of our system has probably the largest percentage of the out of compliance steel pipe and everything. The city several years ago bought the gas company from a private individual. And the city made the decision to purchase the gas system as it existed at the time. And we inherited it. And then since that time, we've been responsible to do the daily operations of the gas department. The daily operations of the gas department are not a moneymaker in Rockport, Aransas County. Our biggest consumers of gas are our community pool and Walmart and HEB. You know, most people that have gas appliances in their home, you know, we don't have a real severe winter here, so furnaces don't run for extended periods of time during the winter months here in Rockport. So we don't have a lot of usage on the system. The age and infrastructure of the system is what is hurting us, and we are under mandated requirements by the Texas Railroad Commission, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and we have to replace all of that steel pipe within our system. We've got over, I want to say, close to 12 miles of steel pipe within the system that have to be replaced, and we have to do a certain percentage of it every year to be in compliance, and we're falling further and further behind. We had 3 different points of entry into the city with 3 different pipeline providers that were bringing gas into the city of Rockport. After Hurricane Harvey, we lost one, we call them gates. We lost one of our gates, the point of distribution where the gas comes into the city. It went away. South Cross Energy shut it down completely. Last year during the winter event, we experienced extremely low volumes and low pressures within our system to the point where we were fixing to lose the system, so to speak, and have to shut the natural gas system down. We didn't have to do that, but we stand a chance of doing that again. We have had a few folks come in over the years.
Here, 829, we issued additional debt $1.59 added to the water. Water and sewer, I mean, wastewater, you can see that's a little harder hit. And then the gas side, that's a big hit. You nearly double that rate to the citizens. And guys, this is just for the capital expenditures. This does not include inflation for labor or materials or supplies. This is just paying for that capital expenditure.
Sounds like we really need to find a buyer.
Yes, we do. Now, what Mike said, I'll agree with. Even if we find a buyer, we still have steel pipe in the ground. Whoever buys it is going to have to replace it, that pipe. So the rates are going to go up for the citizens. I don't think there's any way around that. We want to continue to run it and maintain reliability and have that issue. That's really the question. Or, they say this, you don't supply gas. You get out of this completely. I think that's not viable, but that's always an option. You can't afford to provide the service, and I don't think it's providing it. Sorry about that, Chris. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, just real quick, this will take 5 minutes unless you have questions. City manager search. Like to advertise, hopefully by the end of this week, advertise at least through mid-May. The new council takes office on May 24th. I'd like to be able to share the applications with the council members as soon as we can after the election results, as if we can. Then review, initial review of the qualified candidates on their first council meeting. We're going to put them to work immediately. Then council narrow the list of candidates down from, hopefully we have hundreds of applications. I mean, your community, I said, is Jim, and I don't think you will have any trouble attracting applicants. I think you're going to have some great choices. With the salary that you guys offer and the community that you offer, you're going to have great choices. Would then go through the interview process, and I recommend to you, once you bring the final 3 to 5 in for interviews, hold a town hall meeting, get the community involved, and present those final candidates to the citizens. It has a couple of benefits. You get to watch them, the potential candidates interact with the public. I would have them introduce themselves to the community. I mean, stand up and talk and introduce. So you get to see them in action. And then I'm going to zoom down at the bottom. You could have a new city manager here for his or her first meeting in July. That's an aggressive schedule. I'll tell you that, that's an aggressive schedule. Any questions about that process?
You guys are going to be in July?
No, I'm done with this. I'll be here for as long as you need me. But that's a goal. That's a goal.
One thing, I really appreciate your input on the things you've seen that worked in your interview. One thing I would like to add is maybe a little bit of citizen input towards the top part. Narrow down, if we get, say you get 60 applicants, whatever, however we narrow it down, but also add some kind of citizen input of the qualified candidates, and then as council and maybe some kind of citizen light, narrow it down to 3 to 5. Then we move forward to that town hall and interview process.
Yeah, we can do it any way council wants to do it. So if you want to involve the citizen committee, you certainly can. That'll slow the process down, but you're making important decisions. So
I think it's important that this person be able to work well with the citizens as well as council. But you've been through the process. You've seen it at your interims. What's harm in doing it that way?
No, there's no harm in doing it that way. Ultimately, the decision is council's.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you guys will make this decision. Whether or not you want to involve the citizenry in that citizen committee is up to you. Where I've been, they've not used that. That doesn't mean that's not the way to go. It just adds another layer. And what if their favorite is not your favorite? That could be an issue. It's just things to consider.
Do we get to an open meeting violation if we did council and citizen meet together as far as the panel choosing candidates? Or we're just happy to open?
Well, normally you would, when you're discussing candidates for position, you'd probably do that in executive session. So, I mean, you can do it any way you want. If you want the citizens committee to review the qualified candidates, because you may have 100 applicants who they won't all be qualified. They won't all meet your minimum requirements of 5 to 10 years of city management experience, or whatever that is, that you guys decide. It just, if you guys want to do that, I'll make it happen. I need direction from the group, and then we can bring it back for an action.
I'm one guy, what I would want is maybe each council would get to put 2 or 3 members together from their wards, so that way wards are represented as well, along with the members.
Yeah, you could involve them, for instance, on a police chief search that I did. I asked for questions from the police troops, so they generate some questions, and I took those questions and I of course, ran them through legal and ran them through HR to make sure we could legally ask those. But then we had a selection committee that sat back, and we had some of the police officers ask those questions of the candidates, the final candidates, and our committee, in this case it would be you, sat back and watched that interaction. So you're not busy writing down the answers to questions, you just get to watch it. So that worked well for me, and brought buy-in from the police officers. They really were happy to participate and do something like that. Or instead of wanting to do something all on their own, just whatever you want to do, we can make happen.
And maybe the point I guess consider is staff, some staff buy-in as well. I mean, ultimately that's going to be their boss.
Right.
So if they can't work with a candidate, then I want to make sure that's not the one we did.
Yeah. Let me expand on the process a little bit. When you bring the candidates in, we usually provide a tour. And you assign different staff personnel to provide tours. You bring them in, have them like you do to the community. You bring them in, have them introduce themselves to the staff in a general staff meeting. And you're being interviewed the whole time. And so you get input from the staff in that process as well. In that police search, I went as far as taking the final 2 candidates for police chief. Took a couple of the police officers with me, and with permission of the city manager of the city, went and visited that city, and the police officers interviewed the troops, and I got to talk to the council and other people. And that worked real well. I don't know that you necessarily need to do that, but that's just an extra step that you can do. So there's all kinds of ways to get there. Just what do you want to do? And like I said, we can advertise, and we can narrow down that process along the way. But I really need to get it advertised. Sorry.
I'm just going to say, from an HR standpoint, you would want to be really careful and not make too many outside voices, simply because of concerns of if someone was being discriminatory. You have to be careful what questions you ask, how you approach things, and someone that's not, if we have, say, a citizen that asks questions that we're not supposed to ask, or approach things in a discriminatory way, it doesn't come back on them, it comes back on us.
Yeah, that's why
so you would have to be really careful with that.
That's why I want those questions in advance so we can screen.
I think we need to keep in mind that we're not doing our normal budget process, in that we're having this strategic meeting now, and I think we're looking at having that initial budget meeting in June.
Probably June.
Which would be the same time this is going on. And we need to get on top of the new mayor in place, the new city manager in place, so that we can move forward and everything that needs to get done. What Casey said is so true. There's so many, but just a slip of the tongue. It becomes a liability with more people involved. So it's definitely something to think about. I love the idea of having a town hall and just watch them interact. I think that's a great idea. Because in that way, the council can sit back and watch and see, okay, he's not, and on and on and on, we can make judgment calls along the way. I should say he or she, we would have to be equal opportunity. But, so having the citizens, a large citizen committee involved is going to make it slow way down. But if we do the town hall, that does give every citizen a chance to talk to every finalist before we make a decision.
And I think your citizens won't be shy to let you know how they feel.
We're not shy here.
No, I want to kind of disagree with her on that. I think to delay it and with that budget process and having the council, we have to really think about that and how to get a city manager.
And let me say this year, in the last year with COVID and all that, I know city manager is a big job, and we probably have 100 applicants, but applications for even your high-paying jobs are being very slow to come in right now. We have an accountant position right now. I have received 4 applications and it's been over a month. So it's just, I don't know why. It's being hard to get applicants right now. So I know city manager is a different animal, but they may not come in quite as fast as we're used to. So that may be part of the timeline also.
Yeah, we'll advertise at Texas Municipal League, TCMA, Texas City Managers Association, International City Managers, County Managers Association. I'd like to use a hybrid where we're not bringing in a search firm, but we're using some of the search firms' capabilities, like mass mailings to their database, and some other of their services. I think the cost for doing that hybrid probably about $6,000. By the time you advertise at all the different places, advertise on their side. For confidentiality, we may want to have the applicants go to that outside third party to encourage people to apply. And then once you guys have finalized or come to 3 to 5 finalists, that's when you make the names public, basically. That's another issue with the citizen committee. If you're doing more than, bringing in more than with the finalists. If you just want them to interview the finalists, then that's okay. But for some of these managers, like I said, you will be very attractive. But if they think that they're putting their job on the line by applying, and that goes public, then that's an issue. So when you get down to your finalists, absolutely publicize those. When you have 80, 60, whatever the number is, hopefully it's a lot. Yeah, but I don't think you published everybody that applies.
I don't want to do the spot, but what did y'all do to get Dr. Garcia? Was during the process, whatever you can discuss about that?
We worked with someone that the process was, so there were like 100 applicants, 80 applicants. They went through them, they weeded them that didn't meet the requirements. And then there were maybe 20 that came to us. We had a system where we picked the top 10, 9 that we were gonna interview, and then we had a question to our the guy helping us. We're like, is there anybody we missed? And he's like, yeah, there's this guy. And it ended up being Dr. Garcia, but he ended up blowing everybody out of the water. So you might want to ask, once you pick your top 3 or whatever, you might want to ask who's ever helping you. Is there someone you might recommend or you see that we missed? And but yeah, it's just a process. We didn't go to the public because of the reasons.
Okay.
Can't really do it.
I didn't think about that part, but I understand it totally now.
But I remember when the city hired Chief Stevens, we had lunch. There was like a community group where we got to meet him and stuff before. I think it was before the final offer was made. So that was yeah.
And y'all still hiring?
I use my utensils.
First time. Okay. Any other thing there? Like I said, I'd like to go ahead and advertise, get it going, and we can hold the process down there.
Before we move on, I have a question about that. Do we or should we review the job description before we advertise?
I can send it out to you. It's pretty standard stuff.
It wouldn't hurt for us to look at that now instead of waiting until.
Your charter will dictate their responsibilities, and the only thing that you may want to change is the years of experience. Qualifications. All right, city properties, I put this up here again because a couple of you mentioned you guys want to discuss it. So, for instance, the vacant Old City Hall site, no reason to keep it. I'd like to get that going for sale, and so move forward unless somebody adopts them. And of course, any offers that come, you would have to approve as possible. The unused parkland, I had that discussion earlier. If you guys want to pursue selling that property, we can certainly go down that route. If y'all want to discuss it.
You know, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of an open park. But, I mean, since Rick talked until we took that bathroom break, there were, 7 or 8 great ideas that were thrown at you that you feel the parts of that park so that we can make it so it's for a diverse group of people doing a diverse amount of things. So maybe we should look into that and go that route. I mean, it's not going to cost us $8 million. And the land is free, it's ours.
Right.
So that's what I think.
I agree. I mean, just knowing now that you have to, just knowing that money being sold, it has to go towards one certain thing, and we can use it for that one certain thing, it makes more sense just to look at the options of what we can do that without having to spend $1 million.
You never, I mean, you own it, and it would be tough to sell, and then 10 years, 20 years down the road, go buy another piece and pay a lot more for it at that point. So keep it, try to use it the best you can. I mean, it's the way to do it. All right. Okay, economic incentives policy. This is the last item except for other issues that you may want to bring up. Okay, and we've got about an hour and a half till the next council meeting. So we'll take as long as you want on this item. So, all right. So economic incentives policies, hey guys, they're just tools to grow your tax base when necessary. They're just tools. That's it. Second, they provide your economic development group with guidance on which tools or strategies they may use to grow that tax base, right? And finally, council is not obligated to use any of these tools or grant any of these incentives. Council has the final say on every project seeking incentives. And guys, I added this at the last minute. So I could speak to it. I apologize. We needed to transition, and I did this last minute, so I apologize for that. It's self-explanatory. They're just tools. Okay? You're not obligated to provide any of these incentives to anyone. But should an opportunity arise that's good for the community, and it takes an incentive to bring a business in here, you've given your economic development folks guidance on the tools that they're allowed to use. That's all this is. And we'll talk about each of the individual items. There's basically 4 different strategies that you could use, and I had summarized those for you in an email, but we'll go over it here. First, and you'll see all of these have a chapter, and that is a chapter out of the state local government code, which is state law, which allows cities to provide these incentives and dictates how cities are to use them. So tax abatements are just exactly what it sounds like. It gives a city or county the ability to discount or abate ad valorem property tax value for a limited time. And again, it's used to stimulate, encourage, and develop business location. If a business is coming to your town, and they're coming regardless, there's no need to give tax abatement. They're not. But if you're in competition with another city, and other cities across Texas are providing tax abatements, and you come on a list, on our company's radar, if you don't have these tools, they may pass you by. They may not just pick Rockport because of the quality of life or the environment. They may be seeking things, and they owe it to their stockholders to get the best deal for their company. So that's why these are there. And again, Chapter 312 dictates how cities do tax abatements. Again, it provides an abatement in property tax for a company that comes to you. You forgive future property tax over a period of time to attract the company. Chapter 380, I love Chapter 380 agreements because in these agreements, you can put all the risk on the developer. You can require them to upfront monies for public infrastructure, and then you pay them back for that infrastructure through either a sales tax rebate or a property tax rebate. And when if the area develops quickly and that cost of that infrastructure is paid off, the abatement goes away. So I would really like 380s. Taxing, refinancing, or TIF is out of Chapter 311. And basically this is a public financing tool. What this is, I can read that to you, but if you have an undeveloped area or an area of life that you want to bring up, you draw a circle around that area, okay? And you create whatever that tax base is at that time, that becomes the base tax rate. And as you make improvements to the area, the property values go up, and therefore the tax revenue goes up. You dedicate the tax revenue increase above the base to pay back the infrastructure that you use to bring that area up. That's all that is. And Mike Meek, I know you're behind me. If I say something wrong, correct me. Public improvement districts are real similar to TIFs, okay? Except that to create a PID, we call it a PID, PID, Public Improvement District, you usually have to be petitioned by the owners of the property. So again, you draw a circle around an area, every property owner in that area has to agree to being taxed. So they could be inside the city, they agree to be taxed for public improvements, upgrades in street lights or sewer streets, whatever it is. But when a property owner comes into that area and they're going to buy, and they weren't part of the original group, say a PID is passed, the information that the PID exists will be provided to the new owners. So again, you're petitioned by the owners currently within the PID or within the area. They basically have to agree to the tax for whatever benefit that they see. Like I said, usually it's for street improvements, upgrades in materials and that type of thing. But that's all that is. It doesn't have to be real complicated. Now, I went through that really quickly. And I can go back and talk about each one if you want. Or Mr. Meeks is here. Mr. Meeks is here also if you have questions for him. Again, these are just tools, guys. They're different tools. You're not locked into anything. It just gives folks like Mr. Meek in economic development the guidance on, hey, these are the things that we like. You can limit the time for tax abatements to 8 years. You can limit it to nothing higher abated than 100% or 80% or whatever that number is. You can dictate that on each deal. Each deal is its own separate deal. You're not required because you gave it on one hand to this company, well, you got to give the same deal to this company. Not so. Each deal that comes before you is its own. Okay? You're not locked in. You're not obligated. You haven't set precedents. I've heard all that. You're not.
These policies are only good for 2 years, and they have to be either re-approved or updated and re-approved or,
yeah. Chapter 312, and this is my memory of the law, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Chapter 312, that's the tax abatement, requires a 2-year renewal. So it's sunsetted. So when we drafted the policies, we said 2 years on everything. Okay.
And that gives us the option of 2 years, you just say this isn't working, so we're just gonna let it go.
Right.
But on the other hand, all of this is just a tool.
Right.
Just a tool.
Right.
We never have to use it, but in order for it to be offered, in order for the EDC folks to be able to say, we got these tools, we have to have that policy. Because they can't say, we have these tools, we don't have a policy to back up that the tools are available because of all that legal fun stuff, read my blogs. So, but, I mean, it's just a tool. Doesn't even matter, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what it says, but it does matter what it says, but it is just a tool.
Again, usually you aren't giving up anything for tax abatement. Say, if a company comes in and you give a tax abatement that goes down from 100% to 0 over 5 years or 8 years, you don't recover anything that first year because you're abating that 100%. The next year you're gaining 20%. Next year you're gaining 40%. On until they're paying their full share. But the reality is, if that company doesn't come, you're not giving them anything you don't have.
It's 100% buy-in, whoever's in that circle, whatever. Do they often fail because of the 100%?
Are they hard to make happen?
Yes, sir.
I guess if you go into an established area with lots of different owners, yeah, that could be an issue. But it depends on the product, and Mike probably has more experience on this than me, but like I say, for a good example, you could draw a pit around Austin Street. Okay. Now, the smaller the pit, the higher the tax on the individual members.
I guess that's what I was wondering. Right. That's what I was thinking was Austin Street. You put a pit on them, but then you tax them.
Yeah, you're only taxing those people within that circle. And depending on how much, say we need to spend $3.65, $3.5 million on the road, and another $865,000 for the water line, you're close to $5 million.
Yeah, that's under.
And to put that on those few amounts of individuals, they probably wouldn't vote for that. No. It really depends on the project and the number of owners.
So is it typically be more and say, we just say something on the bypass, that's just raw land now, and then.
Right, say you have a developer that comes in and wants to develop an area, and he wants upgrades to the street lights and those things. He wants to go upscale, and he wants a way to pay for it. And we say, well, the rest of the citizens aren't going to pay for that. We want standard stuff here. And he says, well, no, I really want this to be an upgrade to what everybody else has. And you say, well, there's a pit opportunity here. Okay? So you can develop it this way, and these are the costs, but only those property owners that buy into that over time are going to pay that tax. The rest of the citizens aren't going to cover that. That's what it is.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
And there is a mechanism for various people to get out of the pit after a specific time, but that's beyond the scope of this course.
Once that infrastructure is paid off, you can solve the pit. Much like a mud, but it won't go there.
Read cave box.
Yeah.
I agree with almost, yes.
I know that was really quick, and I apologize, but if you want to spend time on each of those, you can. I'm just sensing I've worked too hard today.
I just looked it over.
Right. Mike, anything else to add?
I enjoyed being here today and listening to all your needs. And there were two comments that particularly came to my mind, two quotes. One was from yours, Richard, was that Richard said you can't do anything without funding. That's why you need economic development to increase your commercial tax base, Councilman Jackson. And then, Mike, I really like something you said earlier. You said, anytime you can spend someone else's money, we need to take advantage of it. And that's why you have a TIF for the community. So I think this could help this community solve some problems. And we look forward to just having the tools to try to give you some options. Thank you.
Well, the other thing, Mike briefly mentioned, he's right. When we were talking about population and workforce, as we develop businesses within the community or new businesses, some of the workers that we have today that live in Rockport but travel to other places to work, we'll recapture those folks. So that's another benefit of growing business.
Yeah, you don't necessarily grow your population through this commercial tax base because you have a lot of folks, you've got a lot of outflow of labor. By the time I look at it, over 2,000 people a day are heading to Corpus. Well, if some folks can stay here and work here, they're more likely to spend their money here. And the price of gasoline, and you're importing labor, you're at risk of not getting that labor. There's a bigger call, especially for the blue collar person and others that like working in the hospitality industry. That's a real burden on them. So there's a lot of reasons why to try to get some more businesses here.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.
Anything else? All right. Other issues for consideration? All right. Guys, I want to thank you so much for giving your time to the community today. I think it was well spent. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your guidance. Appreciate it. It was good for staff to hear these things. It's good for me to hear these things. This will help us put a brochure together for the search. Hey, these are our needs as outlined by our county. So all of this is worthwhile. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for being